All right, everyone, we are here in the aftermath of Kurai's death to see what y'all thought about his classmates reacting to the aftermath. There had to be a better way to put that, but I just don't see it.
All right, we'll go ahead and read some reviews.
Some reviews.
Light Hero Kaiser. Most interesting, great chapter mate. Can't wait for more. Kaito. Wait a sec. That mystery girl said, I'm still too late. Light, you thinking what I'm thinking? Light. I think so. Let's say at the same time. Light. It's Kurai and
Future
Mina's...
Blake.
It's Kurai and Mina's daughter. Light and Kaito. Wait,
what?
This
That
makes
makes no sense.
Or does it make sense?
Well, I guess we have two different ideas. Let's see who will be right.
Yes, may the best man win, which will be me. And if I'm right, I want to control the laser cannon.
Kaito, no.
Blade Hero Light and Bow Hero Impact signing out.
Kaito, yes.
Oh, that was...
All right, so I saw bits of some of these reviews, and I think the general consensus among the fans is that whoever this Mr. Girl is, she comes from the future.
Okay.
So it's an interesting thought.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Light Hero Kaiser. All right, Ed Marshall. Is this a new?
No, Ed Marshall's been in a few times.
Okay,
I'll go ahead and take this one.
All right, go ahead.
Let's see. No, Mina's reaction was heartbreaking. While the fact that she will become a sort of mentor to Izuku help her heal.
Help her heal.
Will one other person help her heal, as that person thought it was too late, and Hikari already took that deserved place in the Pinkette's heart, and that he was undeserving of her? Honestly, dude, you're gonna have to work on some of your grammar here, because I don't understand half of what was trying to be conveyed in that sentence.
He might have been excited.
Yeah, I would hope so, but I'm trying to understand like that entire thing, and I'm like, I like.
Will the fact that
he's hoping that I got that he was sad, that Mina's reaction was sad, and that he's hoping that like her being a mentor to Izuku will hopefully help heal some stuff for her.
Yeah. I think that's what they're saying.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Well, gotta let the story unfold. We'll see. See, next says, plus there's one thing I wonder, will Kai appear as a vestige in his own quirk mindscape, as now Izuku's the second holder of Energon, and in the canon manga, the fact that part of consciousness is transferred to All for One and One for All with the quirk. I don't know. It could be possible, but I mean, as far as I know, we've never really One for All and All for One being passed around. Like, you see the vestiges of the previous people who held on to quirks. You see it in there, but
and
like
it's
quirks
their
that
will, not their personality. Like it's not their whole being. It's their will.
It's their will. Yeah, it's like an echo of who they were. I think it's like, yeah, I don't know, because we see that between One for All and All for One. But like quirks that have been passed on by All for One, like into other people, I don't know if it's just because we don't have enough screen time with them or what. But like 9 didn't have any issues like with vestiges from the quirks that he stole.
Yeah.
We haven't seen any of the villains that like All for One employed like the vestiges from those previous abilities. Like they're not messing with them. It's just been the holders of All for One and One for All. So I'm thinking that I'm operating under the assumption that that's kind of like a unique thing to them.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. Let's see. I know it may be too much to ask, but I think in future chapters we will need a part where each person close to Kai has to have some closure, and I would love it if he left a personalized message to all of Team Lightning Drop plus Bakugo, Shoto, Kirishima. He was the closest to them, as he was to some a lover, a rival to the others, a friend and brother in arms to at least 2 or 3 of them. I think they all need a moment or a scene with a future chapter where they will finally be accepting the parting of the guardian hero. Maybe Team Lightning Drop will become bigger, and each of them will have a moment with Energon in Deku's possession, and will have a power boost, and this time it's more permanent. I think this will be needed in the final war. Okay, so let's see. Personalized messages. He's kind of already done that for some of the people that you mentioned. As for the rest, you'll have to wait and see. Something to remember though is that like I have to keep the story moving forward. Like I can't take time to like cover how this affects like every single one of his classmates in extreme detail.
It could get a little dry that way.
It could get very dry that way. I've already gotten a little bit of flack for some dry content in this past arc, so I'm gonna try to avoid that. This isn't the end. Like this isn't the end of like people reflecting on what his life and death meant to them. But I'm going to try and keep it a little more dynamic than the last time I had to do not a recap, but a slower paced arc. So, yeah, we'll see on that one. Thanks for another wonderful chapter. Now I'm going to go and hear a bit of upbeat music to erase that cloud hanging above my head.
Oh, I know the feeling. All right. Thank you, Ed Marshall.
Yep. All right. Getting serious for a minute here. Chaos Control 85 left a review that I find incredibly distasteful. I'm not going to air the contents of said review here. If you're really that curious, it's up on fanfiction.net. But I found the content matter to be incredibly offensive and just so rude to a grand majority of my readers. What I understand, in some regard or another, I'm sure they think that they're defending me, but the way they did it was honestly very twisted. I don't appreciate it. I do not want to see it again. Like, people can disagree with me. They're allowed to do that. They're allowed to express that they want different things in the fiction to happen that are happening. That's one of the reasons that I open myself up to these criticisms. I don't want to see people cutting others down on such an ugly level. Like, that's not okay. I don't want to be part of an environment that allows that. And I'm certainly not going to allow it. I'm not going to encourage it. If I see a message like this one getting posted again from anybody, I'll call you out in private. If I don't hear a recanting from you, you will be blacklisted from my stories. I will not let you put reviews again. You will not be allowed to view my stories. You're done.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I'm sorry if this comes across as incredibly intense, but this is a serious matter, one that I cannot just let pass or go under the radar.
Yeah, you don't make comments like that, even if you don't agree with someone. And
yeah,
there's a lot of people who leave reviews, and there's lots of criticism, and then there's also lots of joking about characters and poking fun at Mataris, and that's fine.
It's fun. I don't mind it.
Yeah, but you can't be taking it that far. That's really extreme, and we need it to stay a safe environment for everybody who is commenting. Yep. All right. And yeah, that's just not some stuff that you say. Yeah. Anyway, moving on.
All right. Next is one of your favorites.
All right, Atomical. All right, Atomical. You already know you drove me to tears. Only for Mina, though. There goes a guy with 25 outputs for one
Can you guys just, make up your minds on a number?
What's his name again? Kurai?
Ha 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 ha, aren't we funny?
Which is great, because I can picture it with her accent, and it sounds like him. Like his name, actually. Well, I actually need to take a break before I start balling up again. So, well done. Have a slice of Kurai's Death Day cake. Wait. What's that?
For those of you who are not a part of the Discord server, someone on this review panel actually made a Kurai's Death Day cake. Took a picture of it and, was eating it in front of me and everything.
That was my idea.
It was your idea.
But he did it.
He did it. Oh, my.
It was so funny.
Oh, man. I was just like, you didn't.
It's okay. We had cookies instead. He's not meant to get any? Oh, sorry. I have to take the cake back. Yeah, I'll eat it for you.
Well, apparently it was a coffee cake, so, that would have, killed me, so.
I'm here. All right. Well, thank you, Atomical.
Thank you.
All right.
Always good to hear from you.
All right. Last Robin. Behold, the day has come, for I have no criticisms today. Gasp, shock, awe, I know.
Ooh.
The emotional beats are well done and properly written. Not too long, not too short. I like Bakugo beating Energon out of Deku. That was fun. I enjoyed that too, buddy. I'd say my only request is to see Deku have to tackle the hurdles of Energon's weakness. I want to see them properly tackled, but I'm sure you're on top of that.
I am definitely on top of that. Don't worry about it.
Again, the Candlelight Vigil will be held soon, as soon as I get the time. It will be a beautiful, chaotic mess of sadness and evil. Just you wait.
I don't know how much sadness there's actually going to be from you guys. This just largely seems evil to me.
Mina, super sad. The class is super depressed. Candlelight Vigil.
Well, thanks for that.
Gotta love those haikus. Thank you, Last Robin. See, and I have to say,
review, dude.
I have to give you props because my brain doesn't work that way, and I've never been good at writing haikus. So, you go, buddy.
All
All right,
let's
Silver.
see.
I
Silver
appreciate the
4700.
spacing. It helps me so much.
Do you want me to take this one since it's super
I'm still
long
going to
one?
let you take it because
All right. Excuse me for a moment. I have to get my cake from the oven. May I say, it's a delicious chocolate cake. To Kurai's death, everyone. Well, now y'all know who made the cake. Everyone's reaction to the death is interesting and warranted. Mina is arguably the most interesting due to, as pointed out in the story itself, having an unhealthy mourning process. Excuse me, sorry. Mina. What is wrong with you? Oh, Kurai. You see, it's actually this really interesting thing in the gray matter of my skull called a tumor. Really, it's a miracle what it can do to the human body. Mina, just show a modicum of emotion. Akudori, I have literally no idea how you want me to react. Sorry I hurt you by calling to make sure you're okay. That's an oversimplification of things, but he's not wrong.
A meme. Continue.
Let's see. Serious note. Everything was well written in regards to everyone's emotional aftermath of the entire ordeal. There are always fan stories that either deal with this too lightly or too cheesy, for lack of a better phrase. So good on you for all that good writing. Thank you. All right. I'm glad. I'm glad that like even the people. It seems like even the people who've been like poking fun at their dynamic the most are kind of being affected by this. So I'm like, all right, cool. I think that means I did a good job, like at winning things around. So thank you for saying so. Let's see. It's also really good with how Bakugo is, in a sense, starting to pay Kurai back for helping and motivating Deku to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
It's something that was touched on in the original My Hero Academia story as a sort of recompense to Bakugo being a tool to Deku in their early days of friendship. But I like the angle you're going for here. Yeah, I wanted to... Because, like, Bakugo hasn't become as close to Deku in this version, so he needs an extra... He needed an extra reason, an extra drive to help Deku going forward, like, in any capacity.
And now they have the opportunity to build up that relationship, too.
Yes. This is an unfortunate way that it had to come about, but...
So that's how it works, in life.
This is true. Misery loves company, right?
Yes, you could say that.
Yeah. Kurai, after saying all his goodbyes to Class 1A. By the way, my last will and testament about who gets what of mine will be written and sent to Akurui with all the other files, but I needed to get this said. Oh, no. To Ida, I leave my big book of sad and traumatic stories from either my past or dad's job that perfectly applies to the situation. Use it well, use it often. If you don't tell a story from it at least twice a day for any situation that will come up, I will haunt you. To Bakugo, I leave my discount lightsaber as a constant reminder that you never have nor ever will prove to anyone that you're better than me because I'm dead. Oh, man. I mean... Not gonna lie, I feel like if he had lived to be an old man, he definitely would have done that to Bakugo. He would have just mailed it to Bakugo and been like, "Here, have this reminder that you were never better than me."
Oh my god.
He's Akaru's brother. He's got to be some level of petty in there.
Oh yeah.
Let's see. To Mina, I leave my collection of Star Wars box sets so that you can always be reminded that my body burned up like Darth Vader. So my death was a Star Wars reference. Izuku gets nothing because I already gave him something. Oh, man. Now, Mina's moment with Kurai's last recording. I have two things that I want to say about this. First, and from the angel on my shoulder, this one hurt. For the first half of this chapter, we see Mina non-reactive, for the most part. But it all comes crashing down here. Knowing that her love and future with him is ripped away is really emotional. I won't lie or deny that. While not nearly on the same playing field as a significant other dying, I feel for Mina to a certain extent when I had to break up with my girlfriend earlier this year. Honestly, everyone writes about someone feeling sad or heartbroken, but after having felt it myself, it genuinely feels like your heart is being ripped out of you. It hurts. It truly does, and I honestly really like the way that you wrote this because it portrayed that in a way that is reminiscent of the feeling that I had. Props to you. Yeah, thanks. I mean, yeah, I've only ever dated 3 girls in my life. The last one of which I married, and I never did the dumping. So both previous times I was dumped, and one of which I had been dating them for well over a year. That really hurt. So like you, I can't say that I've been hurt like this bad, obviously, but I was able to kind of draw from that experience and the feelings that it created to try and breathe a little more life into this scene. So I'm glad that I suppose, I don't know if glad is the right word, but it is good to hear that I'm evoking the emotional responses that I'm going for through this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that one definitely hurt. That I feel like you described that pretty well for me too.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Similar.
It was
Similar for me.
Yeah.
But
all right. Secondly, from the demon on my shoulder. Oh boy. I must say that it is glorious to see Mina in such pain. Her tears made my coffee taste especially good, and I drink it with satisfaction knowing that she will never know pain as strong as this. Her despair goes great with my chocolate cake commemorating Kurai's death day, and I must say I feel such a deep sense of joy and happiness upon eating that cake and knowing that Mina has reached her absolute lowest point. That's what she gets for taking Switch's eyes. Man, you are just not letting that go, are you? You know that scene in Spider-Man 3 where James Franco eats pie after crushing Peter's spirit and the waitress comes up and asks how it is and he just responds, so good. Yeah, it's like that. Gotta love Spider-Man 3. The only Spider-Man film worse than Spider-Man 3 was The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
oh my gosh.
I love Spider-Man 3 for the memes that it generated.
Yes.
I loved it for what it was. I understand what they were going for. They didn't do a very good. They didn't pull it off. Unfortunate as that was.
As a child and as someone who genuinely enjoyed like 99.9% of every movie I ever watched, Spider-Man 3 ruined Spider-Man for me for a lot of years.
I have to say though,
nope.
Like getting to watch No Way Home though was like I really loved getting to see that. Like those, like
Yes.
both Andrew and Toby's Spider-Man like
yes.
got the closure that their own series didn't offer to them.
Yes, I loved that too so much. And I actually regret that I never watched Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man series because I was still so hurt over Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 3 that I was not ready to put my heart on the line. As dramatic as that sounds, that is literally why I didn't watch.
I mean, Spider-Man was like the live action superhero that we grew up like.
Yeah.
Like our parents showed us the Christopher Reeve Superman like pretty early
and that
on.
was
like,
OG superhero for me.
But like Spider-Man is the superhero that we got to grow up with.
Yes, exactly. And he was my favorite for years until they ruined it, right? And so, but it like years later, I actually fell in love with Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man because before I even saw the movies, I saw a behind-the-scenes documentary of all of his acrobatics and physical acting, and I thought that was so incredible because I think that's something that's really lacking in a lot of actors nowadays is that, you know, those skills and that ability to do the physical acting.
I gotta show you some of the scenes of like him being Spider-Man because like a lot of the body language and even a good deal of the lines that are spoken are just Andrew Garfield going to town with it.
Literally that was my introduction was that behind the scenes. I just happened to be sick and sitting at my grandparents' house and there was a documentary on the TV, and then that's what piqued my interest and then I watched the movies. And I don't think I even watched them all the way through. I just saw bits and pieces because it was on TV with commercials. But I really, there's a soft place in my heart for Spider-Man in general, but I love all three of them so much. And I feel you. Sorry, total tangent.
Spider-Man's a good way to get us into a tangent.
Yeah.
Spider-Man and Star Wars. Great way to get us into a tangent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. All right. Further, I don't have a lot to say about Deku getting a Nika. I think it'll be interesting. I'm just admittedly hesitant about this simply due to how much One for All played an All for One in Shigaraki's plan. Mina helping him learn it will be rather interesting and will act as an interesting and possibly even awkward dynamic between them. I said most of what I have to say regarding this in my last review though, so I'll wait until I see more of this plot in the story. Yeah, man, I can't elaborate on this whole thing without like spoiling a bunch of stuff. So I'm just gonna leave you with the wait for it.
Concerns.
It is a valid concern. It is something I definitely took in consideration in advance, like while planning out this next part. So,
cool. All right.
Let's see. When I read this chapter for the first time, I genuinely didn't know who the blue guy was supposed to be, and initially thought him to be an original villain you made for this story.
Aww.
Dude, I wish. However, I have since watched movie 3. You're welcome. And I'm curious to know as to how much Kurai's death and even Deku's inheritance of a Nika will affect the plot of that movie. Regardless, I'm interested. Without spoiling anything, it'll change a lot. I'll say that. It's going to change a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Lastly, I'm still extremely interested in this new mystery character you have. If I were to make a theory, I'd say this person is giving me strong Lucina vibes, as in she might have come from the future. I'm still too late. How will I even explain all this? I'm honestly probably very wrong, simply because you mentioned that she seemed familiar to Shigaraki, but I don't know. It wouldn't be the craziest thing you put in a story. Wait, wait. What? I'm curious. What's the craziest thing you guys think that I've put in a story?
I mean, they did they did read Saiyan Tail.
They did, yeah. Like I did a few crazy things there, but I'm genuinely curious. I'm like, what do they rank as the craziest thing that I've done for a story?
I am curious.
So I'm
please
like,
answer this question.
Yeah. Please answer that one for me, because I'm like, I can think of a few things in my head, like right off the bat, I've done that I would consider crazy. But I'm curious to see what you guys think is the craziest thing that I've done. So get back to me on that one.
Do I get to say?
Sure.
I think the craziest thing you did was have Mataris' sister not actually die but exist and get replaced with the AI.
Yep. And then it turned out it wasn't the AI.
That one.
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, I think that's the most convoluted, crazy thing that I've pulled off, and it was believable.
I definitely cried a lot there. I didn't cry much in Red Swordsman, but that was one that made me cry. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Sorry. Yeah. Let's see. Again, not a whole lot of criticisms here, mostly just thoughts. Not a bad thing, but I feel bad for not coming up with many criticisms. Oh, well, you'll give me plenty down the road in terms of the story, I'm sure. Oh, I'm sure. I'm so sure. I hope yourself and Becca have a great day, Silver.
Oh,
thanks for your review, dude. Yeah. Guys, let me know, what do you think is the craziest thing that I've done for a story?
Yes, please. All right, Joe Clone. Well, that was dark. Kurai's final messages to Class 1A and Mina were very nice and touching. And since Akurui, he received one too. I expect in the future we'll learn what he said to his brother. Poor kid. I'm sure he gets... I sure hope he gets some reprieve from going forward. I'm so mad at myself for not mentioning him last time. And plus, with this preview, poor Shuken too.
Yeah. What kind of fans are you all saying that Akuru is your favorite and you don't even bring him up last time? What's wrong with you people?
Yeesh. The scene with Mina was just visceral. It's so real that I felt the pain with her.
Awesome.
Gosh, you're mean.
Sorry, okay, it's not often that I get a review set without a whole lot of criticisms these days, which I will say are well earned. Yeah. It's a good thing. I'm glad that people are critical of my work. But it's good to get the reaction you're trying to I put a lot, it's not a long chapter, but I did put a lot into the aftermath of events, and I'm glad that people are responding to it the way that I had hoped they would.
Deku and Bakugo discovering their friend's last act was brilliant. The "think, moron" line gave me Omni-Man vibes. That's
like the J.K. Simmons character who plays like evil Superman. Yeah.
Glad they found a glimmer of hope during this. Thankfully, you showed us World Heroes missions, so now I know who the mysterious villain is.
Yeah.
So, taking the plot to Japan, how much would that change things?
A lot.
I bet you're going to give everyone their Black Ops outfits from the start of that film.
Yes. I'm still upset that we only got those for 2 minutes of screen time.
That was so sad. The mystery girl, for some odd reason, I'm getting Trunks vibes off of her, and yet Red Cape makes me think of Nana Shimura. But her cape was white. Shigaraki? But he got that from Xless. I'm running in circles because apparently she's got voices in her head now like One For All was supposed to, but it left with Kurai before they could show up. What's her deal? See you next time, Mataris.
Oh, man. I can't wait for you guys to get to her bit.
P.S. I like the Deadwood bullying, by the way, but I do miss the classmates joining in the Amaki.
Okay. I will be bringing the classmates back eventually, but I'm like, this is a mourning period for them, and it's weird. I can't find myself writing them in the Omaki section, in such a lighthearted manner, in such a manner that would oppose the current. I would like to keep your guys' image of their suffering, for lack of a better term. I'd like that to be the constant image in your guys' head. Yeah, while the story's happening, as opposed to breaking it up with the Omaki. So that's why I brought in other things.
Definitely something that rubs me the wrong way with a lot of shonen anime is we'll be in this really awful scene or arc, and then all of a sudden we have this omaki with like everyone joking, and it makes
Demon
no
Slayer's
sense.
done that a couple times.
Which Demon Slayer, it kind of works somehow,
Yeah.
but it still rubs
like
me
you got
the
the
wrong
bit
way
where
sometimes.
like Tanjiro's just like choking and his sister's like, "Are you okay?" Oh, I guess you're not gonna be okay anytime soon. Anyways, on to the fun fact of the day.
I know that ouch. Yeah, see that bugs to a certain extent. I don't know how I feel about it. Like it's funny sometimes, but sometimes I'm like,
So yeah,
you're
I'm trying
disrupting my sadness.
I'm trying to
over the
keep
scene.
your guys' image of the characters' current mind frames as a constant. So I don't want to disrupt that. That's why I'm
But
bringing
the
other people
Omakis
in
will
for
be
the
back, right?
The Omakis
Yeah.
are still going
Yeah.
on. It's just right now I've got Mataris, Light Rush, and Deadwood doing
Got
it.
it. All right. Cool. Thank you, Joe Clone.
Thank you for your review, dude. Yeah. Let's see. All right.
Ooh,
Silly
silly
Kira.
Kira. Oh, you brought out your Might Guy voice for that one.
Did I?
A little bit.
I wasn't trying to.
All right. All right.
Should I read that
Yes,
first paragraph as my guy?
Go for it.
All right. Silly Kira. You and your heartbreaking post-mortem messages. You just cannot resist, can you? For those wondering what I'm on about, go and read chapter 18 of The Red Swordsman, Shattered Fragment. This may not be a very long chapter, but I got plenty to say about it, so here we go. You got me started on it.
Oh man. Okay. Well, I'm gonna let you. I'm a little dizzy, so I'm gonna let you take it. 'Cause
Okay.
My visions. It's
You okay?
It's Friday. It's Friday. I have low blood sugar
Ooh.
and I'm tired. So I'm gonna let you take it because my
All right.
brain's not working.
All right. We'll start with that opening scene, which I can hear the silence you were talking about a little too well. It honestly made me squirm in my seat while I was reading it because I've sat in silences like that, and they're super uncomfortable. I absolutely resonated with the sentiment of wanting the quiet to end, but not being the one who wants to break it. So good job on invoking more negative emotions out of me than just sadness in this absolutely heart-wrenching chapter.
Ouch.
A lot of writers settle for a feeling of melancholy being enough, but I appreciate the effort you've put into making this a roller coaster of emotions as opposed to a linear train ride. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Let's see. Excellent choice of opening gut punches, using the crowd favorite, Akurui, to be the first person who comes to understand what happened on Nabu, who wasn't actually there. I wish we could have heard what message Kurai left for him, but I guess it wasn't necessary in this point in time for the narrative, though I do hope we get to hear it eventually.
Just keep going.
Just keep going. Okay, yeah. I really loved how you showed that even though he mostly can't show emotions through normal means anymore, and he has a history of being somewhat cold and indifferent, he is still certainly hurting. Enough so that he makes the physical effort to try and connect to Mina in a way that she can understand in her current condition.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted him to, this is something important enough where he should, talk. But, even if he can't do it for very long. Let's see. Speaking of, the portrayal of her broken spirit was superb. I loved how you never said the words, "she's in shock." It would have been very easy to just say those words because it would have been enough for us to understand how Mina felt with that simple phrase. Instead, you allowed the narrative to explain it to us through her own words and actions, or lack thereof, which I found to be far more compelling and outright engaging. This also allowed me to get angry with her when she spoke to Akurui the way that she did, because of course he'd be hurting too. But then I realized she simply hit a breaking point, leaving her desperate to have something to strike at in retaliation for the pain she was experiencing. Had you given an abject statement of her emotional state, I think my irritation would have remained, but because I had been made to more or less view things through the eyes of her friends instead of my own, it was short-lived. I didn't even think about that, honestly.
I mean, that's an important thing to do, and I think that's what separates like decent storytellers from really good storytellers is you're not sitting there painting it black and white for the readers and stating the obvious. You are letting them experience it with the characters.
Okay.
And that's what makes a story compelling to me. And that's like, for me, that's probably what I would have done. I'd be like, she was in shock, because I'm not a wordsmith. I'm very literal, and that's just not something that comes natural to me. But those are the stories that are much more compelling, is the ones that where you are experiencing those emotions. I can't talk all of a sudden along with your characters, right? And so no, I definitely agree, and I think that's a really important thing to keep in to take into account when you're writing scenes that are like really emotionally charged like this.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for I how do I put this? Like, I always want the readers to be able to see things through the eyes of, you know, whoever's narrating it. Like, I don't want people to see me as the narrator. I want one of the other characters, or like maybe a group of the characters, to be the narrators. So to hear this kind of thing, gives me hope that I'm moving in the right direction in regards to that storytelling style.
Cool.
Let's see. All right, back to the review. All that said, it's very easy to forget everyone else's suffering when consumed with your own. So another point toward writing realistic characters. Thank you.
Yay. Yeah, and I totally get that too, because I would have been a lot more irritated with Mina if I hadn't clicked that, like, she's literally, like, she's going through a roller coaster of emotions, and of course she's not in her right mind at the moment because she's so, like,
brokenhearted,
overwhelmed and grieved, right? And so I think it just makes sense that some of that anger would come out.
Yeah.
And be unreasonable, because that's generally when there's a lot of anger, it's gonna be unreasonable.
Yeah.
So, and so you can just hurt for everyone involved in that situation.
Let's see. Kurai's messages to the class, as well as the individuals he called out, all felt thematically appropriate. I love that he acknowledges the strangeness of leaving his final words to people he has basically known for less than a year, but not reneging on the feeling that he still considers each of them to be as important as his family. I also quite liked how, even though he now aligns himself more closely with Deku, he singled out Ida before anyone else, as if to acknowledge their history together. Yeah, I did that on purpose. Like, Ida's still one of his best friends, but he's not like his first go-to whenever something's happening. His confidant, yeah. Yeah, but he still is. He's still very, he's still very important to him. He's like another brother to him. Yeah. So I definitely,
Ida's more like family.
I was very deliberate with that.
Yeah.
Okay. The bit with his message to Blake was another gut punch for me. I know he was trying to be kind, but even if she didn't harbor feelings for him, I feel like he might have just made things harder for her to process. I don't think he knew that she had feelings for him, but throw that on top of the fact that she essentially started the countdown to his death, and this is going to be a rough recovery period. I do look forward to seeing how you handle that, because in Ruby, she seems to have a very bad habit of trying to outrun her feelings in favor of burying them under as much trouble as she can find. Yeah, there's definitely some of that. So to clarify, no, Kurai had no idea that she had feelings for him, like, in any capacity. Like to him, he considered her a close friend because, you know, she helped to save his life at one point, and they'd been together through a fair enough amount after that. But no, she has a very good poker face. So yeah, I don't think anybody else knows at this point.
Yeah.
So no, Kurai didn't know. But yeah, it does bring up the point that, you know, he may have, instead of putting out the fire, he may have just added to it. So we'll see how that goes. Let's see. They next say, I found it somewhat humorous that while Kurai was making the recording, he would have had no idea that Izuku would soon be passing his quirk on to him. He was imagining a future where All Might's legacy continued through Deku when he said what he did. Deku will still be able to become a hero, even if it's in a slightly different manner than they could have imagined. I wonder if Kurai was remembering this prepared message when he transferred Energon to him. Not consciously, but, you know, even if he had, like, remember, there was plenty of other, for Kurai, the only thing that mattered was that Deku could still be a hero, and that he wasn't taking that away from him. Because, like, that's, like, Kurai cannot stand that. He cannot. That's one of the things that Kurai hated the most about himself, is that he feels responsible for the loss of quirks for multiple people. Just so that he could have the life that he thought he wanted. Let's see. Encouraging Todoroki and Kirishima both was very kind of him. He aims to soothe the lingering fear for Shoto that he will never be anything more than his father designed him to be, and he tells Kirishima that something that every bro wants to hear, that he had fun with him. With those short messages, he tells them both that his time with them really mattered, and he's glad to have known them in particular. Very sweet. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Todoroki, he's gotten closer to as time has gone on because, he helped Todoroki heal from some of his trauma with Deku's help. And, he did the work study with Kirishima. So, they've been working together for a while and they're classmates. So, like, they're not best buds, but, they got closer. So, yeah, of course, yeah, it made sense to me that he would single them out. I'm glad you appreciate the sentiment. Let's see. The class taking his words to heart and getting to work as heroes may have been seen as rushed by some, but I thought that them all getting this particular kick in the pants was genuinely motivating, especially when they didn't press things with Mina in the process. Shows how much they care about both her and Kurai that they would do what they could to honor his wishes without trying to guilt her out of her own mourning process. Yeah, I've seen that happen in a few stories where it's just like, people go through like this horrifically tragic thing and they don't even get time to mourn it properly, and they're just because they're the hero of the story, they're expected to bounce because they're the hero of the story, the author just makes them bounce back, or they're guilted into bouncing back by the rest of the characters. And I didn't want to do that. Let's see. Speaking of which, once again, I'm not sure yet whether or not Kurai's messages are doing more harm than good. I know he was doing what he could to try and give her the closure that he never got from his father, but seeing how it pushes her to dream of the future that they will never have together delivers yet another gut punch to my emotions. A lot of well-meaning gestures from Kurai here, but I suppose we'll have to wait and see if they manage to accomplish what he wanted. Right now, I'm leaning toward not, but we'll see. Yeah, we'll have to see with that one. Bakugo once again carries some of the best emotional weight in this chapter, which is a wonderful delight to see after him being used largely as comedic relief throughout this series. Don't get me wrong, I love how you've used him up to now, but this new dynamic has taken me by surprise without it feeling forced by convenience/circumstance. Him having basically frustrating Deku into using Energon was so on brand for his character, and the follow-up of him scaring his rival into using the new quirk again was hilarious, even amid the heavy atmosphere of the current circumstances. Yep, you guys know me. I gotta try and throw in at least one funny in there. Yeah, that was just such a fun scene to write,
and it would have been too heavy if not. Like that. I think that's the scene that I thought about most after this.
Well, like everything else is like kind of the same tone. Like that's the thing that stands out.
No, and I love Bakugo. We know this.
I was like, okay, Bakugo. I knew like going into this, I was like, okay, Bakugo has to be the one who gets Energon out of him. And it's got to be in a Bakugo way. How do I pull this off? So I had to think about that for a little while. Like it was really hard to find the balance between it's like, okay, how do they get into it without like him just like needing something to blow up because he's frustrated? Because like Bakugo's not at that point anymore. Like in the past, I think it's safe to say that he would have just started wailing on Deku because he was frustrated and needed to vent some emotions, because we have seen him do that.
And there's not too many people aside from Bakugo who can get that out of Deku. Like, you have to push really hard to get that little cinnamon roll to budge on his cuteness. So,
yeah, but, that was a real. I think to me that was really funny, but like to me the funniest part personally was when Deku's like figuring out, oh, I can do this too. So he's like trying to copy what Kurai does. And then he realizes, he's like, oh wait, I have no idea how to control this. And just blasts this huge laser up in the sky because he's trying to get it away from him. And Bakugo's just like, watch it, you idiot.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that was really fun. That was really fun.
Sorry. I finally got the thorn out of my thumb from last weekend.
Ouch.
Sorry.
You're fine.
I got really excited there for a minute.
Let's see. We also once again see just how much Bakugo actually holds Kai in regard through both his words and now his apparent motivations. I mean, I know in the original canon he starts helping Deku to master the other aspects of One for All at this point, but somehow this felt more compelling. Not only does he probably feel guilty about how he treated his rival back in the day, he still has a sense of debt toward the guy who saved his life twice now, and his father for dying to set him free.
Yep.
I guess Deku has inheriting the Guardian Hero's power and the responsibilities that come with it also factor into his decisions here. I get the feeling this won't be the last time we see him helping Deku from here on out, though I do have to wonder at what point he's going to consider his debt repaid. Interesting thought. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. He's got two dead guys who gave their all to
And
make
I
sure
have
that he'd
to
be
say,
okay.
even if that were the thing, I feel like this is the kind of relationship where when you pay back that debt, it's kind of a lifelong thing. And
Yeah.
I think whether it's quote unquote repaid or not, you don't really just end a relationship like that.
Yeah.
Too. So it's like, I think the level of closeness that they're entering into is something that's going to be a lifelong thing.
Yeah.
So
We'll have to see. Yeah, we'll have to see how this whole thing, how this whole dynamic turns out as a result of this. But it is a good point to bring up. Let's see. So Mina is going to have to train Deku now, huh? Interesting. I have no doubt that Akuru and Bakugo will also be involved in this process, but I feel like you might be sleeping on the contributions that Ida can make to this new development. After all, he's known Kurai longer than any of them except for Akuri. He'd have a pretty good idea of how the basics work so that Deku can have a solid starting point to work with at school. Not that he knows more than Akuri, just that he could be a little more hands-on with his advice. I'm sure you know what you're doing, but I thought I'd throw my 2 cents out there on this one. Yeah, Ida could definitely help. I just didn't see a way to like bring Ida in on like how to bring that dynamic that Ida can offer into that conversation at this point. Because it's like, you know, things are happening all over, but I can only focus on so many people at a time. And, you know, just I feel like if Ida sees Deku and Bakugo kind of hanging out in the vicinity without anybody else immediately around, he's just going to be like, nope.
And go in the opposite direction.
Go in the opposite direction. He's like, I
don't know. That could go one of two ways. It could go...
Well, if he saw them fighting, he'd go toward it. But if they're just kind of like sitting there...
His little robot hands.
Arm. Yeah, yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, but if they're just like sitting there and it's awkward, he's just going to be like, I'm going to go.
Yeah.
So... I couldn't figure out a way to work him into this part of the conversation without it feel shoehorned.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I can't really see him having a role at this situation. Sorry, no,
but it is a good. Again, it's a good thing to bring up. Yeah. Let's see. Humorize is already entering the picture, and they're going to move the opening act to Japan. Oh dear. Yeah. Oh man, I'm excited for the third movie arc. In case you can't tell. I doubt that Deku is going to get exposed to any, but can you imagine what would happen if he got exposed to Trigger? Forget destroying a city. He'd probably immolate half the country if he couldn't control a hyper-fueled Energon. Yeah, that would be bad.
That would be very bad.
That would... goodbye, Japan. Let's see. Okay, the last bit. The mystery girl. Am I seeing some kind of one-for-all shenanigans? Her hearing voices and them talking about connected hearts and masters. She's giving me doomed future vibes, and my gut instinct says that Akuru is going to have something to do with it. I don't know why exactly my brain came to that conclusion, but you've been hinting that he's going to play a bigger role in the things to come, so...
I like where you're going with that.
Yeah, I like that train of thought, man. Let's see. Whatever the case is, I'm more intrigued by what is to come than ever before, so bring on the next chapter. Yay!
I was seriously, like, before Joe released these chapters, I was seriously so stressed out that you guys were all just gonna drop it after this. So I'm glad.
I didn't think that would... I thought maybe some people might drop it because, like, it's come to the part where, you know, Kurai's dead, so, you know, it's come full circle, and, you know, I did what I said what I was gonna do, and so what's left for the story? But we've got people who are still interested. They're invested in this alternate universe that I've managed to create. So thanks, guys. Let's see. Oh wait, we got a crying Shuken. Nope. Don't make me watch the funny guy get serious. No. Yes. Well, thanks everybody for your reviews. We always have a delight with these, and I'll just go ahead and let you guys listen to the audio chapter. Based on some of the comments and questions that you guys were leaving, I'm pretty sure most of, if not all, you guys are going to like this one.
Yay.
So we'll catch you guys soon.
I hear the rain start to fall as it turns to a pour. We're here again in this storm, but we've been here before. I see the street signs wanting, telling me that I have no other place I could go. Feel like I'm stuck in motion, can't find balance. I'm living in a vertigo. Everything
hero. Akurui sat in silence, tears slowly trailing down his face as he stared off into nothing with an abject intensity. He wanted to cry, actually weep for his loss, but he lacked the physical strength or capability to do much more than let out a pitiable groan. He wanted to curl up into a ball and scream into his pillow. He wanted to throw something. He wanted to put a hole in the wall with his fist. He wanted the world that had taken his brother from him to know that it was a cruel and unjust one. But he could do none of that now, and it seemed that his body's sacrifice had all been for nothing. All he could do was let the tears fall down in an atmosphere of near absolute quiet. He wasn't quite sure how long he stayed like that in his room, though it was likely not a lot of time had passed before there was a rapid series of knocks at his door. Before the person on the other side started to speak, he knew who it was and what they were about to ask. "Hey, Shuken," his cousin announced so that the voice penetrated the dense wood. "Were you able to get in touch with Kurai and his friends? Are they okay?" Akurui was tempted, just for a moment, to pretend that he had fallen asleep in his chair, so that he might put this conversation off for just a little longer. For all the good that would do, he thought almost as soon as the notion crossed his mind. Knowing that it would be best to get it out of the way, the sickly boy wiped his tears away and sucked in a deep breath before he typed into his tablet, "I was able to receive a call. Most of them are all right." "That's a relief," he heard Shuken breathe with a hoarse chuckle. Obviously, he had been worried something might have happened to the young heroes, which made the knife in Akuru's gut twist sharply. It got worse when the other boy asked, "When are they coming home? I know it'll probably be a bit before transport can be arranged, but was Kurai able to give you an ETA?" "Kurai wasn't the one I talked to," the youngest Hogasha answered. There was an ugly silence from the other side of the door before Shuken said in an almost imperceptible voice, "He's dead, isn't he?" When Akuru's fingers hesitated over his tablet, the other boy went on to say, "If he was hurt, you would have told me about it right away. If he wasn't the one who answered his scouter, well, it's not that hard to figure out." There was another brief pause before his cousin added, "You're welcome to correct me at any time, by the way." "He's dead," he finally replied. "I don't know the details, but I think one of the villains responsible for the attack was the one who did it." Shuken whispered a soft curse under his breath before he said, "I'd hate to know what kind of villain could do that to him. I was honestly starting to wonder if he wasn't invincible." "I'm sure we'll get more details when the official reports are released, or if I can get a hold of Tenya later," Akurui replied. "I think they all just need some time alone right now." "Sounds like they might not be the only ones." Akurui's eyes flicked down to the crack in the floor between his door and the wood to see Shuken's shadow shifting in place, though not in a manner that indicated he was about to open it. This was followed by his cousin asking, "Do you need anything before I go? I should tell Mom, and I doubt you want to be the one to do it." "Shouldn't I be, though?" "You and your brother," Shuken sniffed, sounding like he was fighting down a lump in his throat. "As amazing the pair of you can be, you never know when to stop and let somebody else help you along. You just do what you can to process things for right now. I'll be back once I finish telling Mom. You can buzz us if you need anything before then." Upon being told that Akurui would need help in pretty much every aspect of his daily life, his parents had installed buzzers in each room that he could activate from his wheelchair, on the more than likely chance that he would be alone and would need a way to summon immediate assistance. "All right," the boy now replied. There was a faint creaking sound that came from his mouth, but he quickly gave up on trying to produce actual words when his throat flared up with pain as a warning. With a barely audible sigh, he typed out, "Thank you." "No problem, man." With that, his cousin's footsteps quickly retreated up the hall, leaving Akurui to stew in his silent, frustrated misery. Shuken's heart was pounding and his head throbbed as he made his way through the house, doing his best to ignore all the memories that were trying to leap out at him from every corner. In the entrance to his room, Kurai's old dwelling, he could see the three of them as children, gathered around one of Akurui's first laptops, awestruck by the sight of Revan leading his forces against the Mandalorians as the renowned Jedi Crusader. Turning his gaze away from that, his eyes locked onto the garage door where he could see Kurai, his uncle Shigeru, and his own father, all gathered with grins on their faces around a motorcycle in desperate need of repairs. Blinking that image away as quickly as he could, he passed through the living room, where he could see their family, along with the Idas, celebrating Kurai and Tenya getting into UA High, followed by him and Mina trading quips over the chore of washing dishes after the dinner they had shared. Across the room, his eyes burned at the sight of his cousin and the pink girl waving farewell as he bade them both good luck on Nabu. Dashing the tears out of his eyes as best he could, he jogged toward the office that his mother used, raising his hand to knock before he heard a sound that was unfortunately familiar with. Lowering his hand, he shut his eyes tightly as he listened to the sound of his mother trying to get the sound of her weeping under control. She had always done this for almost as long as he could remember, ever since his father was killed in the line of duty. Dad, Uncle Shigeru, and now this, he thought in a miserable silence. Resigning himself to what was to come, he asked, "You heard about Kurai?" There was a sound of a person wiping at their face before her voice came back in the form of the words. "Here I was trying to figure out how to tell you. How'd you find out?" Aki got a massive load of diary entries and audio files from his brother's scouter about 30 minutes ago. The teenager answered in a wobbly voice. He seemed to think that something was up, so he called Kurai, but I guess one of his friends picked up instead of him, which pretty much told Aki what he needed to know. We don't know how he died, but he thinks that a villain did it. After a slight pause, he asked, "How did you know about him?" "His teacher, Eraserhead, just called me," Sakura replied in a tired tone. "Apparently, Kurai had been seriously injured during his class's first contact with a small group of villains, and he was forced to fight again shortly afterward. He saved the island's entire population by defeating the villain's leader, but the effort was too much for his body to take. He died shortly before the pro-heroes could get there." A highly volatile mixture of emotions welled up within Shuken at those words as he shut his eyes tightly and leaned his head against the door. On the one hand, he felt proud of his cousin, not just for acting as a hero should, but for keeping his promise to stand his ground no matter what came at him. On the other hand, he felt betrayed, almost. He had trusted Kurai when he said that the chances of danger on Nabu Island were next to nil. He had trusted his father when he told him that he'd be back from work in time to catch his ball game later that week. He had believed in his uncle when his mother said that the heroes and police would finally be able to track down and negate the threat of Tomura Shigaraki. And where had all that faith and trust gotten him? His uncle, father, and cousin, all of them were dead, leaving their family to pick up the pieces yet again. As for the heroes, they would do what they had always done, move on from the loss and prepare for the next mission. Dad was barely worth a mention on the news, and Uncle Shigeru just ended up being a hot topic for politics. He thought bitterly, what's that going to make Kurai when all is said and done? Just some hero wannabe who got in over his head? Will there be anyone who actually cares about the kid behind the name when he died? Forcing the maudlin thoughts aside for a second, he did his best to clear his throat before asking, did they say anything about what they're going to do with the body? He had to fairly choke out the last words, the knot in his throat having doubled in size. I asked them to bring him home so we can bury him by your dad and uncle, his mother answered. This was followed by the sounds of her moving across the room, which preceded the door to the office opening wide to admit the worn-looking woman. The two embraced tightly, the tears beginning to fall freely between them as he once again felt the crushing weight of a family member lost to the evils of villainy. Why him, Mom? Shuken couldn't help but ask. Why did it have to be him? For the same reason as Shiro, she answered him through her own sobs, so that someone else could live. And what if that's not enough? He wept. What if I can't find it in me to accept that line of reasoning again? Even as he said it, he felt horrible for doing so, but there was nothing to keep him from speaking his mind now. Then your cousin died in shame, I suppose, Sakura answered in a subdued voice which stung her son like a viper. If we refuse to accept that he did what he did because he had to, and for no other reason, we shame his memory and his sacrifice. There was a slight pause before she forced herself to add, as harsh and uncompromising as that sounds, we have to find a way to accept it. It's bad enough that he's been killed. I don't want to see you come to hate him because he chose to be a hero. I won't hate him, Shuken said as he shook his head and pulled back to wipe at his eyes. He didn't do anything wrong, and I know that. Is this going to be like Dad? He looked at his mother with such lost eyes that she could only see the little boy who had clung to her at his father's funeral, trying desperately to understand why his daddy wasn't going to make it to his ball game. Are people just going to show up at his funeral and say some nice stuff and then move on? Is everyone going to forget Kurai and what he did for them? I don't know, his mother answered through a sniffle, her mind scrambling desperately to try to come up with some reassurance for Shuken and finding nothing that he might want to hear. I hope that people remember him. I know that we will, if nothing else. But that's not enough! Shukin insisted as he grabbed at his hair in frustration, his breath coming out in ragged gasps. He did so much for people! He suffered so much pain and isolation, he never even complained about it. He gave up everything! And I know he did it without a second thought when the time came. He was a real hero! His hands fell to cover his eyes as he murmured, Do people even remember what a real hero looks like? Not some flashy smile and an over-the-top charts ranking, but someone who'd do anything to save the powerless? Will people like Dad and Kurai even be worth remembering to the world again? Sakura wished once again that she could give her son the answer that he wanted, but she was not in the habit of lying to him, even in an attempt to ease his suffering. So she remained silent and allowed him to begin the process of venting his frustrations and sorrows, as she always had before. As she listened to his anguish, her mind took her back to a time where a similar sorrow had gripped the Hogasha household. 10 years ago. Is he going to come out today? I don't think so, sweetheart. Mocha said to her crestfallen elder son from where she was sitting next to a red-eyed Sakura. She and the boys had come to check in on her brother-in-law's family, having last seen them during the prior weekend. Kurai and Akadori had pulled together to get their cousin a gift that they hoped would lift his spirits, but it seemed that Shukin possessed zero interest in coming out of his room beyond survival necessities. It was very nice of you two to bring him that game, their cousin told them through a feeble smile as she eyed the box's cover art. Shiro. He told Shukin he would get it for him if he played his best this season. We know, Akadori said softly, his bright eyes unwavering as they scrutinized the adults with an almost unnerving intensity. I think Uncle Shiro was going to get it for him no matter how good he played. He just wanted Shukin to try real hard. It was incredibly unnerving to hear such a well-structured sentence coming out of a 3-year-old, who also maintained eye contact better than most adults could. Mocha and Shigeru had the thought that his quirk was manifesting itself early, unlike Kurai, whose powers awakening at the age of 5, nearly 6, made him a late bloomer. The boy's father had thought that the quirk might be a more powerful version of his memory retention, but that didn't seem to be quite the answer to the unsettling vibe that always seemed to hang around the youngest Hogasha boy. Can we take it to him, Auntie Sakura? Kurai asked after a slightly awkward stretch of silence filling the air. Maybe it'll make him feel better. I don't know that he would appreciate it right now, sweetheart, Mocha informed her son, though she managed to smile at the kindness he was attempting to show, in his own way. We can try again when we next visit, okay? Okay. Thank you for trying to come up with something to cheer him up. Sakura sniffled as she wiped at her raw eyes. I know it's really hard for him right now, but I'm sure that he'll like it when he feels up to trying it out. Can we try to talk to him? Akudori then asked. Maybe he just doesn't want to talk to grown-ups. I don't think it won't hurt to try, I suppose, Sakura said to cut off Mocha, who looked at her in confusion. The boys needed no further invitation and scampered off down the hall while she told her sister-in-law, I know everyone grieves in their own way, but I can't help but worry about him being all alone right now. He's not alone, Mocha insisted as she gently patted the other woman on the back. He has you, a wonderful mother who's going to see to it that her husband's son grows up to be every bit the man that his father was. Tears started to leak out of Sakura's eyes again as she whispered, I want to believe that's true, but I'm just his mom, you know? There are things that a boy needs to hear from his father when he grows up, and I'm afraid of what I'll do when days like those come around. I know you and Shigeru are going to do everything you can to help us, and I appreciate it. But not even Shigeru can fill Shiro's spot for the really important things. Barely able to make it past the last few words, she buried her face in her hands and began to weep anew, while Mocha could only offer her the meager comforts of a calming touch and silent solidarity. Kurai knocked on his cousin's door a few times before he and Akudori tried waiting in silence. When this yielded no results, Kurai turned to his brother and said, Maybe he's in the restroom. He's not, Akudori answered simply, reaching up to try to turn the door handle, only to prove itself locked. His door isn't opening. He has to be in there. Maybe he's asleep. It's really bright outside. I don't like sleeping when it's bright. Yeah, but he seems really tired ever since the funeral, Kurai murmured as he folded his arms and continued to stare at the door. He hesitated before he added, I don't want to wake him up, but I'm real worried about him. If Dad died, what would you want to do? Akururi asked, startling his brother with the very notion. What? I don't want to think about something like that, that's what, the elder boy sputtered. Uncle Shiro dying is already super bad. Why would I... Shut up! A hoarse voice called from within the door, startling both brothers into taking a half step back. Shuken then added, Go away, guys. I don't want to see anyone. Sorry we bothered you, Kurai offered, but their cousin was having none of it. Go be sorry somewhere else, he snapped. You guys don't get what this is like. You still have your dad, so everything's fine for you guys. Don't talk to me. Okay, sorry, Kurai said as he tried to back away, starting to lead Akururi with him. We just wanted to check on you, but we'll go if we're bugging you. Why are you so mad at us? Akururi asked bluntly, causing his brother to look at him with alarm. We didn't do anything to you. Go away. I think you're really mad at the heroes, the little boy continued, shrugging off his brother's attempts to get him to leave. It's because they didn't save your dad, isn't it? Aki, stop it! Kurai insisted sternly. He said he wants to be alone, so let's go away. We shouldn't bother him. But he's mad at us and we didn't do anything bad, Akururi replied in kind. He's being dumb. You don't say that about him! Kurai snapped, his attitude shifting into one of anger, his grip tightening on his brother's sleeve, which caused the fabric to rip off into a ragged scrap that left both boys in surprise momentarily to replace their irritation with one another. Whoa. You broke my shirt, Akururi complained as they both stared at the piece of polycotton. Now you're being dumb too. I didn't do anything bad and you're both picking on me. You were picking on Shuken. Nuh-uh. I said to go away! Said boy stormed over and flung his door open, looking paler and skinnier than his cousins had ever seen him. His eyes were red and ragged, and he smelled like he hadn't showered in several days, somewhat to his family members' disgust, though they tried to set that observation aside for the time being. This was a little easier to do since he was yelling at them. I don't want to see anyone. Get out of here. But you already see us, Akururi pointed out with an abject tone, causing Shuken's face to redden further as he balled up his fists, which led to Kurai planting himself between the two of them. Aki, shut up, he said over his shoulder. Looking forward, he then added, Sorry for bugging you, Shu. I'll make sure he leaves you alone now. You're not the boss of... Ow! That hurts! Akururi whined as Kurai grabbed on his arm and yanked him away from their cousin, who was staring at them from beneath greasy, matted hair while breathing heavily. We'll see you later, the elder brother said as he started dragging the smaller one away, despite his protests to the contrary. Whatever, Shuken muttered as he went to close the entrance to his sanctum once again. It doesn't matter. The bad guys took my dad away, but all everyone cares about is that they all went to jail. Hey, your dad mattered to All Might, Akururi grunted as he continued straining against his brother's grip. All Might told you he was super brave and did a good job. Don't say that it doesn't matter, because Uncle Shiro really mattered. Aki, that's enough, Kurai growled before he yanked on his brother hard enough to pull him off his feet and then drag him down the hall, ignoring the shouts of protest and childish abuse that he received in return. The two boys would later get a lecture about disturbing people who want their space, but while Mocha scolded her sons, Sakura was able to smile for the first time that night when Shuken joined her at the dinner table. 8 years ago. Shuken, he's going to be okay. Mom, you didn't see him, the boy said as he continued to pace back and forth in front of his mother and Akururi, who was bouncing his legs on the seat that he had occupied without so much as a word since they had gotten to the hospital. He paused for a moment to look her in the eye, and as he said with a shaky voice, Mom, Kurai was really scary for a minute. And the medic people, they said he might not even make it to the hospital, and I don't know if that's scarier. The three of them were in a hospital waiting room that was occupied by only them and a handful of people that were scattered around the area, none of them apparently knowing one another. If anything, the boys were grateful that today seemed to be slow traffic for victims of villain attacks and circumstance. Not 3 hours ago, a panicking Shuken had called his mother to tell her about how an ambulance was on its way to pick up his cousin after he'd gotten into a street fight with some of the local bullies. At first, she worried that they had done a number on him, but the narrative he gave was equally terrifying in its own way. He told her that Kurai had somehow transformed and gone on a small rampage against the two boys who had been picking on her son before collapsing into some kind of convulsing fit while blood gushed out of his nose. Apparently, the medics had some trouble getting to them because in the process of his fit, Kurai had severely damaged the street to the point where vehicles couldn't even get to the school. Even so, he had been taken away by the emergency responders while a thoroughly shaken Akururi and Shuken were questioned by the police and a local hero who went by the name Nimbus. Kurai had been rushed to an operating table at the nearest hospital, where doctors were still working on him, hoping to stop the hemorrhaging and finding out what had caused the bleed to begin with. Akururi had informed the EMT workers that he suspected his brother's quirk was to blame. given that Kurai had been the picture-perfect image of health up to that point. Shuken wanted to know more about this theory, but he couldn't bring himself to satiate his curiosity until he was sure that he wasn't going to be short one cousin. He was hardly aware of his mother telling him, "The doctors here are very accomplished, son. I'm sure they'll get Kurai healthy again." Despite the firmness of her tone, Shuken didn't miss the trembling in her hands that she was trying to hide behind her purse. "Mom, The boy's tongue tried to twist itself up so that he couldn't speak, but he managed to clear his throat and say, "The guys who were targeting me, they said some really awful things about you and Dad, and that's why Kurai went off. He got so mad because I didn't do anything to stop them." His eyes widened while he clutched at his hair as he gasped out, "Is Kurai gonna die because I just didn't want to stick up for myself?" "Your cousin is not going to die." Shuken let out a little start of surprise as he turned around to see his uncle Shigeru approaching them with a worn expression on his face as he said, "He's going to live. He'll probably be asleep for a couple of days, but the doctors are confident that he'll make a full recovery." He and his wife had been admitted into the hallway just outside the operation area as soon as they had each arrived, having coming in from work while Mocha rushed over from her house. "Oh, thank God." Sakura breathed out, her frame sinking into itself as she released the tension that had been building up inside of her for the last few hours. Likewise, Akurui let out a long exhale while he slumped down in his chair, his eyes slightly glazed over as he felt himself able to fully breathe. Even in spite of the good news, Shuken could not release the worry that had taken a hold of him. "Do they know what happened to him?" he asked pensively. "Not yet," his uncle said as he shook his head in the negative. However, he did turn to his younger son and add, "But it seems that your theory about his quirk being the problem is the most plausible explanation right now. The doctors will be running more tests once he's healthy again, but the lead surgeon told your mother and I that it appeared as though his frontal lobe has been thoroughly abused in some form or another. There was no sign of chemical damage, which means that it had to be hormonal, something that his body did on its own." "What's a frontal lobe?" Shuken inquired. "The part of your brain that keeps you from doing stupid stuff." Akurui answered before the adults could. "That makes sense. He was super mad right before he passed out." There was a brief moment of silence before Shuken asked his uncle, "How old is he again?" 4. "That was a rhetorical question, Aki, and I gave you a rhetorical answer." "That's not... Ah!" Shuken dropped his hands in frustration before asking Shigeru, "You said he'll be awake in a couple of days?" "That's what we're hoping for, yes." What if he doesn't wake up by then, though?" the boy asked, his fear simply refusing to dissipate. "He will," Akurui insisted as he stood up and walked over to his cousin while looking up at him with determined violet eyes. "Kurai is stronger than anyone I know. He'll be okay, I know it." "You can't know that," Shuken said while shaking his head doggedly, missing the worried look that exchanged between his mother and uncle in the process. What if we lose him, like I lost Dad?" "Shuken," Shigeru said as he placed a firm grip on the boy's shoulders, pulling him back from the line of circular reasoning that he had just been about to enter. "I know this is hard for you to hear, but not every tragedy that strikes our family is going to turn out like what happened to Shiro. Kurai was able to get the help he needed, and he's as safe as he can be right now. I don't know the future, obviously, but I am confident in his ability and will to survive." The words stung Shuken as Shigeru had predicted they would, leading the boy to pull back and growling, "Is that what you told Dad right before he died?" There was a deafening silence for a moment, following his mother's sharp intake of breath, and though no words escaped her. His uncle then stepped back slowly, his face having grown hard like flint in the process. "He may have been your father, but Shiro was also my brother," he said in a cold tone that chilled the boy's bones, though he tried not to let it show. "Given what we both lost already, I'm hoping you don't have to learn what it feels like to lose your brother, Shuken. Because believe me, as much as that still hurts, I don't even want to consider the potential pain of losing a son." The grade schooler felt his face go red with embarrassment and shame as he realized that while he was indeed terrified of what could befall Kurai, it could be nothing compared to what his aunt and uncle were feeling right then. Before Shuken could open his mouth to offer an apology, something hit him in the fork of his legs hard enough to make him double over in surprise and pain. The adults looked in surprise at Akurui, who was glaring at Shuken with his backpack in hand, the object of his cousin's current misfortune. "Don't use your dad to excuse being mean," he said through a scowl. "I have more where that came from if you do it again. If Kurai almost died, it's because he didn't want you to get hurt. Instead of being mean to everyone, try being nice like Kurai has always been ever since Uncle Shiro died." "Akurui Hogosha, you do not hit people like that!" Shigeru said admonishingly, scandalized by his son's actions, but also being aware of the fact that there was more than one curious, and annoyed, gaze being thrown in their direction. "I've had quite enough of my sons acting violently today, thank you." After spending 2 days without much sleep or work being done, Shuken finally got the call he'd been waiting for. A quick cab ride later, he was meeting Akururi and his aunt in the hospital. "How is he?" the boy asked as soon as they were within speaking distance. Well, his first question after learning his head was operated on was if he would have a cool scars like Revan. Mocha answered with a somewhat flat tone. He seemed more upset about the fact that he wouldn't have any lasting marks than he was about being unconscious for 2 days. One of the surgeons has a quirk that makes scars almost disappear once the cuts finish healing. Akururi chimed in, looking very chipper as he did. Normally he wore a face of cold scrutiny or wariness in his day-to-day life, but today he seemed genuinely happy. Sounds like he's okay to me. Shuken couldn't help but laugh, now feeling silly for having spent the last few days worrying over nothing. Is he okay with me being a visitor? Sure thing, Mocha answered with a warm smile. He was actually asking if you were okay once he understood what happened. I told him you would probably want to visit once he was cleared for it. She then told him the room number and floor to find him on, saying that she needed to go talk with one of the doctors and pulling Akururi along as she did. We'll be up to join you once the appointment's over with, okay? Okay, thanks. The skinny boy replied before he made his way over to the lobby elevator. A short ride and check-in on the 3rd floor later, he was standing in front of Kurai's room. Hesitating only for a brief moment, he prepared himself for the sight of Kurai bedridden before he knocked sharply on the door. Come in, he heard his cousin call, so he obliged. Even having expected the worst, Shuken was still a little put off by the sight of Kurai's head wrapped in bandages and hooked up to an IV with a plastic tube stuck up his nose to help him regulate his breathing. With all of that factored in, it was almost weird how relaxed the younger boy looked as he grinned and waved at his cousin with the arm that didn't have a drip sticking out of it. Hey, Shu, Kurai said with a way of greeting. I figured you were going to come visit. Aki said you were real worried about me. Sorry about that. Dude, why are you apologizing? Shuken sputtered as the door shut behind him. I'm the one who should be sorry. You almost died because I was too much of a wimp to do anything. Kurai blinked at him a couple of times before shrugging and saying, all I did was throw a fit like a little kid because I got mad. But in this case, I guess with great power comes a great big headache. You are a little kid? Shuken said flatly, causing Kurai to bristle with indignation. Hey, don't get mad at me because it's true. You're 7. That's little. No, Akururi is little, the bedridden child answered petulantly. He started to add more, but then seemed to think better of it, his face settling into a more neutral expression, which took his cousin by surprise. Seeing this, Kurai mumbled, Sorry, getting mad doesn't help. With a slight grimace, he added, It actually kind of hurts to get mad right now. It hurts? Shuken asked and repeated in confusion. Yeah. Kurai's face grew more somber as he gripped the blanket covering his lower body while he said, The doctors were able to do some tests this morning after I woke up. They used a bunch of words with my mom that I didn't understand, but Akururi did. He told me that getting really angry did something to my quirk that made me super powerful, but also hurt my brain really bad. Like, I could die if I get too mad. Shuken was stunned to hear this so plainly. Sure, Akururi had been thinking something along those lines, but to have it confirmed was far more startling than he would have liked to admit. Wait, so are you, not allowed to get mad anymore? He asked slowly. I don't think so, Kurai answered through a small shake of his head. The doctors said I just have to be real careful when I do get mad. They said they were going to have me talk to a psychiatrist doctor to help learn about how I stay calm, even if I'm mad. He stumbled a little over the phrasing of the specialist, having only just recently learned what it meant. Oh, I've heard of those, Shuken mused as a handful of memories sprang to the forefront of his mind. Dad used to call them something else, though. Quacks, I think? Like a duck? Kurai replied with a furrowed brow. How is a duck a doctor? Beats me if I know. The older boy shrugged. Regarding his relative with a more serious expression, he then asked, What are you going to do now? What do you mean? Well, I always thought your quirk was awesome, but now it turns out it could kill you? Shuken said with a shudder. That's scary. What do you do with a power like that? Can you even use it without it hurting you? I mean, I should probably take it easy for a while, Kurai answered with a shrug of his own. But I've been having an idea for a while, and what happened the other day has helped me make up my mind. Oh, yeah? Yeah. Kurai looked at his cousin straight in the eyes as he said, I want to be like your dad, Shuken. I want to be someone real respectable and brave. Someone you and Aki and our parents can be proud of being related to. There was a very brief pause before he went on to say, I'm going to be a hero. I'm going to be a hero who shows people what your dad was like, even though he wasn't a pro hero. I want to be a real hero, one who doesn't lose his temper and hurt people because they made me mad. I'll be a hero who stops bad guys because it's the right thing to do. A lump welled up inside of Shuken's throat before he could stop it, so he barely managed to get out the words. You want to be like Dad? Really? Really? But hardly anybody even remembers what he was like, what he did outside of the police, the older boy murmured. If you really can become a hero with a quirk like the one that hurts you like this, people will just remember you. They won't even care about Dad. I don't think your dad really cared about being remembered, Kurai answered, though not unkindly. He just wanted to do what he could to keep all of us safe. Shuken might have gotten angry at him under ordinary circumstances, but it was kind of hard to be mad at a kid who just survived brain surgery. Kurai went on, saying, "That's the kind of hero I want to be. Being remembered doesn't matter as much as keeping people safe, like our dads did for everyone. Besides, the way the media always hates our family means I probably won't make it very big as a hero. Yeah, I'm kind of surprised they aren't starting up trouble with your dad after you tore up the street outside of school," Shuken admitted, causing the other boy's face to go sour. "Sorry, I shouldn't have brought that up." "It's fine," Kurai said with another shrug. "I don't know what Mom did, but the families of the guys who picked on you aren't going to be pressing charges against me or nothing. Akaduri said they won't even talk to the news people at all after she talked with them." "Seriously?" "He said there was a lot of yelling at first from the other families, but Mom just kept talking real quiet, and then they all looked really scared of her," his cousin answered. "I'd ask him for the story when she's not around. She seemed like she didn't want him to talk about it." "Good to know," Shuken nodded. He knew that his aunt could be a very scary lady when she wanted to be, and the fact that her son had ended up on death's door because their kids apparently lacked the ability to be decent human beings probably brought out her ugly side. He didn't want to be on that subject. He didn't want to be the subject of that particular scare himself, so he would make sure to ask about it only when she wasn't even in the same building as him and Akaduri. Maybe. Is there really any way to find out that she won't be sure about me finding out? He could only wonder as Kurai settled into a thoughtful expression of his own. "I'll be a hero," he declared aloud, bringing his cousin's thoughts back to the present conversation. "I won't make the same mistakes again. And I'll show you people that real heroes aren't jerks like Endeavor. I'll get my quirk under control, and then I'll show everyone who pays attention that real heroes are the ones who never ask for anything that'll just make them look good on a stupid ranking chart. I'll live like your dad did, Shu. I want to make him proud, I promise." Shuken felt the lump on his throat return as he smiled at the other boy and replied, "A hero like Dad, huh? If you can really get this quirk of yours under control, I'd really like to see that. Just don't die like him, okay? I don't think our family would handle that real well if you did. Trust me, if dying hurts half as much as this did, it's the last thing I want to do." 7 months ago.
"Oh, come on, dude. 3rd place? Really? Is that really the best you could do?"
Sakura laughed quietly as she watched her son yelling at the TV from the kitchen, who was apparently upset that his cousin had only come in 3rd place for the initial race of the UA Sports Festival. In all honesty, given the fierce competition and sheer number of participants, it was a fantastic placing. Her son clearly had a different opinion, though.
"If Zuko and Elsa's love child makes it to the battle round, you better kick his teeth in when you fight him,"
Shuken was now shouting. "Okay, even if they both make it to the final part of the competition, who's to say that Todoroki boy will even end up fighting him?" she inquired, already well aware of the animated nature of the incoming reply.
"What do you mean, if?"
Shuken demanded as he turned away from the screen to look aghast at his mother.
"Kurai's got this thing in the bag. The rest is just formalities."
Sakura couldn't help but raise an eyebrow at his declaration after he returned his gaze to the TV, eager to know what the second event would be. It struck her as odd that her son, a boy who often seemed confident and snarky in his carriage while trying to stifle his own pessimistic tendencies, was in earnest with his belief that Kurai could win. This led to her asking, "You're that sure about him?" "Well, yeah." Shuken didn't turn around, but Sakura could see how his shoulders became a little more set as he said in a more serious tone, "You saw his opening speech. You know he was talking about Dad with that, even if he didn't drop his name." "Of course," she nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "I thought it was very sweet of him to do that." "Well, it was, but there was more to it than that." Sakura's fascination was redoubled as Shuken went on to say, "The day that he woke up from his first episode in the hospital, he told me that he wanted to become a hero like Dad. He said he wanted to show people that real heroes aren't the ones who help just for the show.
they help people without a second thought to glory and fame. I wasn't really sure if he was just talking big that day, but now I believe him. He's going to do what he said he would. He wiped at his eyes before continuing on. I still miss Dad, but I guess I can feel a little better knowing that he really didn't die for nothing. His ideals live on in Kurai, and if he does make it big as a hero, maybe he'll be able to inspire other people out there to live the same way. Sakura smiled while she felt her own eyes sting just a little in response to the warmth growing in her heart at that moment. That would be wonderful, she said in agreement. And I'm sure that Kurai will do everything he can to make your wish come true. He'll be a wonderful hero in due time. Shuken laughed a little bit at that before he turned her back around to say with a somewhat exasperated face, too bad he couldn't be the hero who could have stopped that stupid villain from trashing our car the other day. Seriously, what are the odds that both our car and the train that go from here to UA are both out of commission today? Sorry we couldn't make it out to the event in person, but there's nothing to be done about it right now. The woman sighed heavily, though she honestly shared his frustration being unable to make it to the tournament. Trying to set aside the thought for now, she told the boy, we'll be sure to see him compete in the stands next year. For now, we'll have to make do with the TV. Yeah, but how many times do we get to watch him win a world-famous tournament for the first time? I've been robbed of a once-in-a-lifetime experience. He paused before he said in a half-joking manner, maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing if he didn't win it this year. I really want to see him win in person for the first time. Hey, you don't hear Tensei complaining about not being able to see Tenya compete in the person, so suck it up. Sakura told him with a joking tone of reprimand. You better cheer him on, even if he can't hear you, got it? Yes, ma'am. In spite of his joking complaints that day, there was no one who cheered harder for the rising star than Shuken Hogosha, and his mother had to stifle her laughter more than once when she saw him rewatching the tournament highlights several times in the following months. It was plain as day that Kurai had touched his cousin with his speech and subsequent actions, and for the first time since Shiro's death, Sakura could watch her son really believe in something other than the grim certainty of people taking every sacrifice made on their behalf for granted. Shuken listened to the dial tone coming from his phone for what felt like an eternity before he was greeted with the sound of Tenya Ida's familiar voice. Hello, Shuken, the boy said in a dull tone. His words a little difficult to hear over the sounds of some kind of construction happening in the background on his end. Hey, the skinny teenager replied, his mouth feeling incredibly dry as he did. Is this a bad time? Given what I can imagine you are calling about, I don't know that there is a good time, the young hero answered, his voice now a trifle bitter. You don't gotta tell me that, man. There was a brief pause on the other end while the noise began to subside before Tenya said, You're right. I'm sorry. To answer your question more concisely, I was assisting in the reconstruction of the local hospital, but I'm overdue for a break. I can take a few minutes to speak with you. I'll try not to keep you, the older boy said. First off, other than what happened to Kurai, are you all right? I heard there were no major injuries, but Midoriya was the most wounded among us, but thanks to Recovery Girl's efforts, he is on his way back to a full recovery. Tenya answered quickly. I myself only suffered some sprains and bruising, as well as a slight bout of concussion, but I am now well enough to work. Thank you for asking. Glad to hear it, Shuken said with a genuine measure of relief in his voice. How much longer are you guys going to be on Nabu? We've all decided to finish our allotted time as to assist with the efforts in rebuilding the town, Tenya replied. It is our duty as heroes, and we all believe that it is what Kurai would have wanted us to do himself, were he still among us and able to assist. Yeah, the late hero's cousin murmured, feeling the lump in his throat threatening to choke him again. Speaking of, I was wondering. He hesitated, unsure if his friend would be up to answering his next question in a manner that wouldn't leave them both freshly upset and miserable. Speak your mind, the other boy said, and it was not unkindly. Could you tell me how he died? He asked, speaking quickly so that he did not have another chance to back away from the knowledge that he needed. I know that he fought the boss villain, and he died right after that, but I was hoping to know what he was like at the end. There was another brief silence from Tenya, and Shuken felt as though he had pressed the matter too quickly. Before he could apologize, however, his friend spoke again to say, I wish that I could tell you. That would mean that I was by his side when he passed on. But my duty as a hero demanded that I be elsewhere at that time. Shuken swallowed hard at that, disappointment causing the tight sensation to somehow worsen after that. Even so, he forced himself to say, I understand, man. Sorry to bring all that up for you again, especially so soon after. He was surprised when Tenya said, I can't tell you what happened exactly, but I do know who can. Only... It was the hero's turn to hesitate, but Shukin did not press him, not wanting to risk his chance at learning the answer to his burning question. His patience was rewarded when the other boy said, the one who was with him at the end is an acquired taste. He may not give you the answers you are looking for, as he is mourning in his own way. I'll chance it, Shukin said instantly. Please, let me speak to this person. Very well, give me a moment and I will pass on your request. The line was left open, but all Shukin could make out after that was the return noise of construction and work and muffled voices. As he waited, he could only wonder who Tenya had been talking about as an acquired taste. Kurai mentioned he had a few weird classmates, so that doesn't really narrow it down, he thought silently. He said it was a guy, so I guess that helps. Is the bird guy who talks in poetry half the time Tokoyami, I think? Maybe the guy that sparkles worse than a disco ball. He sounded extra weird to hear Kurai tell of it. There was a brief pause in his train of thought before he perked up slightly with the idea that it could be the student he had done his work study alongside. Red Riot. Kirishima. Kurai always described him as really gung-ho, and they have a history of working together, so it makes sense they would have been put together for your Hogosha's cousin, right? A gruff voice that Shukin did not immediately recognize surprised him abruptly by leaping out of the phone. Yeah, he answered, not bothering to hide his confusion. Sorry, who are you? There was a short growling sound from the other end before he received the answer. Name's Katsuki Bakugo, the next number one hero. Don't forget that. Shukin bristled with indignation before he shot back. Seriously? You're the guy who was with him at the end? How the hell did that happen? Now that he had a name to go along with the voice, he knew that he was speaking to one of the sources of Kurai's more frequent headaches. There was another, more prominent growl before Bakugo replied, Bite me, it was his fault we ended up like that. We tried to keep him away from the action, but he was too damn stubborn to listen. He got tangled up in the fight when he had already busted a lung, thanks to a sword he took to the chest the day before. He shouldn't have even been on the fight in the first place, but he seemed to have a real problem with understanding the words, stay out of it. In spite of himself, Shukin couldn't help but roll his eyes at that piece of news. You don't need to tell me that, he muttered. Ever since we were kids, I don't care. Bakugo snapped, cutting off the other boy instantly. You want to get your warm fuzzies talking about what he was like back in the day, I'll just give the phone back to Four Eyes. I'm just here to talk about what he did in the end. When Shukin forced himself to be quiet instead of starting a shouting match, the bombing hero went on to say in a terse voice, The villain was a discount all for one. Could steal quirks for himself, and he was good at using them. We threw everything we had at him, but he kept taking it until Kai got involved. He blasted the asshole as hard as he could, even though it was killing him. In the end, he told me to protect Ashido so that he could go and finish things because I didn't have the firepower we needed, and he knew it. He knew that he already had one foot in the grave, so if anyone should risk it against the guy, it had to be him. He did what he always promised he would. Stood his ground right up to the very end. Saved everyone we failed to protect. A real hero, more than anyone else here. He really kept his promise to be a hero like Dad. Shukin thought as tears began to trail fire down his cheeks. He didn't back out when things looked impossible. He really believed in Dad's way to live right up until the very last moment. Your cousin was the real number one, Hogosha, Bakugo then muttered, bringing Shukin out of his own head. Most people still think it's All Might, but I know the truth. The Guardian hero was the real deal. So when I become the number one hero, it's going to be the day that I surpassed Kai. Shukin found himself letting out a weak laugh at the utterly ridiculous notion. Dream on, man. If he was really that amazing at the end, you're never going to match him. Bakugo snarled in response. Whatever, extra. You got what you wanted, so I'm out of here. Do your cousin a favor, don't ever embarrass your family name. It's not just anyone who can surpass All Might. With that, the line disconnected, and Shukin felt the phone slip from his grasp to hit his lap and then fall to the floor, which he hardly noticed. He didn't even bother to consider the fact that he hadn't been able to say goodbye to Tenya. The only thing he could do was let the tears out as he held his face and thought, in spite of everything he suffered, he really was as good as his word. Kurai, thank you for being such a great hero. No. Thank you for being my hero. Akarui tapped a button on his computer before slowly reaching up to slide the headphones he had been using backwards so that the set rested around his neck. Tears were running freshly down his cheeks as Bakugo's words continued to reverberate in his ears. It's not just anyone who can surpass All Might. He knew of Bakugo's given disposition and how much he admired the number one hero. It was a praise that surpassed even his own respect of the man, perhaps even that of Izuku Midoriya's. To hear him say such a thing could only mean that his admiration was truly sincere, and that Kurai had died in such a manner that left him with no other recourse than to admit it. As a rule, Akarui didn't eavesdrop on his family members' conversations out of a sense of respect. But in this instance, having overheard Shuken's plans to contact Ida in an attempt to get some answers, he could not restrain himself. It was just as much his right to know how Kurai had lived in his last moments, and he would hear it from a first-hand source. Social etiquette and even privacy laws be damned. My work wasn't in vain, he thought as he shut his eyes against the light of his monitor, which suddenly seemed too much for his aching eyes to deal with. Damn it, Kurai, why did you have to go and use my inventions the way you were supposed to? Even as he had the thought, he knew it was an ugly, unfair one. He had thrown everything that he had into helping his brother become the hero he knew he could be. So why on earth did it make sense for him to harbor even the smallest amount of resentment toward Kurai for living and dying as the exemplary hero he had sworn to become? Why should he hold it against the guy for making the most of the opportunities that Energon and Solar Intelligence alike had given him? Why can't justice come at someone else's expense for once? He thought bitterly as tears continued to rain down. The bad guys lost, the heroes won, as it should be. So why does it still feel like Why did my work cause Kurai to lose? Almost against his active will, his mind began to take him back to the first real step that the two of them had taken together in creating the Guardian Hero. 1 year ago. Alright, since you're going to UA, time for us to get down to the most important of all hero matters. Akarui was grinning as he sat down across from his brother at the dining room table, who was hunched over his notebook, a look of intense concentration on his face. When it seemed the older boy was ignoring him, he picked up a nearby eraser and hurled it at Kurai's head, who scowled before making one last note, and then leveling his look of displeasure at his sibling. There he is. Dude, what do you want? Kurai grumbled. I'm a little busy here. I am here to lend my expert, and rather necessary in your case, opinion on what is going to help your marketing once you become a hero. Akarui answered as his grin brightened. Hero costume design time. Just finished my winter break assignment, so my schedule is officially clear until term exams. Already ahead of you, for once, his brother replied with a grin of his own that wiped Akarui's face clean of any superiority. Flipping the notebook he had been bent over, he slid the item across the table so that the other boy could see a full-page sketch littered with a few notes to detail preferred materials and measurements for certain items. I knew you wouldn't be able to keep your nose out of this, so I decided to go ahead and lay out the basics before you got carried away. First of all, how dare you? Akarui shot back as he quickly scanned the page, his eyes narrowing as he allowed his brain to go to work. Second, when have I ever gotten carried away with stuff that matters? Do I need to bring up the attempted miniature particle accelerator? That only failed because the school's allotted power supply off the main grid was insufficient. It failed for more reasons than that, and you know it. Yeah, but no one else needs to know that. It also has nothing to do with this. Honestly, this is a tragedy, the younger boy said with a look of utter disgust as he shoved the sketch away, ignoring the glare of annoyance from his brother as he did. I'd mourn for the design team stuck with this if it were ever to make it out of the mailbox. Okay, even by your standards, it is not that bad, Kurai grumbled. Look, it's got countermeasures for the drawbacks of my quirk, like you said I would need. As he spoke, he tapped several different pieces on the sketch, which depicted light pieces of armor that would act not only as protective gear, but also apply pressure to various nerve points in order to help keep him calm in the midst of a fight. It looks ugly and cumbersome, Akarui stated bluntly. If you're going to insist on having that much covering, you'd be better off asking for an armor set like Ingenium. Not to mention that if you apply that many pressure points to your nervous system on the regular, you're going to have to worry about blood flow and straight up sensory deprivation. I give you 30 minutes of optimal performance in this thing after you put it on. If that. I got to have some way of keeping my brain from reaching a breaking point every time I get into a fight, Kurai countered with a smaller frown. Even if his brother's insults toward him and his design were aggravating, he knew that he wasn't doing it just to be critical. No amount of pressure points are going to stop that thing from happening on the long run, the younger boy replied with a slight shake of his head. It'll delay the potential onset of other hemorrhaging episodes, sure, but as of right now, we don't have a way of negating the effects completely. Best we can do is manage the symptoms without creating an entirely different problem for you in the process. Kurai looked down at his sketch with something like disappointment before he let out a long sigh and leaned back against his chair while looking up to the ceiling. Okay, he said slowly. What do you suggest we do then? Akadori glanced down at the initial design for a quick refresher before he said, well, I could see you've based the first layer of the costume on our gis, which makes sense to me. It's comfortable, perhaps more importantly for you, it'll be a psychological reassurance to be fighting in something that feels familiar. Something that'll help mitigate the stress you'll be feeling in any potential conflict, even if only by a small margin. Then again, that little bit might go on to make all the difference for you, so it's a solid call on your end. So it's not total garbage, Kurai inquired with a slight grin, which Akadori returned as he beckoned for the sketchbook and pencil, which the other boy quickly relinquished. I question the color scheme given the primary color of your abilities, but that's not the worst. He answered as he turned to a new page and began a new drawing. Personally, I think it'd be best if you went with a purple-white theme, complementary colors and all that. I prefer the warning sign aspect of this color palette, Kurai replied with a shrug. Kind of an unspoken message of, if you see these colors coming from me, you're screwed. What, the immeasurable amounts of energy coming out of and destroying everything in the immediate vicinity won't be warning enough? I love Dragon Ball, and I'm wearing those colors, damn it! Kurai growled, which prompted his brother to add a note on the side of the page. Okay, color scheme, not negotiable, he muttered before pausing mid-writing. Looking up, he then asked, could you at least invert the color proportions? I know you love the series, but you gotta have something to not look like the Son family's illegitimate child. Okay, if that was the case, that'd be awesome, Kurai snorted. But yeah, fine. Wouldn't want Toei breathing down my neck for property or cultural appropriation. Akadori's pencil stopped moving as he slowly looked at his brother with an incredulity before saying, you do know the Dragon Balls from our country. I need to know you know that. Hey, didn't some nationalist group in Egypt originally try to sue Salam for cultural appropriation based on his costume before they realized he was a natural-born citizen? Kurai countered, which Akadori was forced to concede. Yeah, it's because he got his education in England or something, right? Yeah. Okay, fair point. The younger Hikari mused as he went back to work on the sketch. What material were you going to be requesting for the armor? I hadn't gotten that far, but I was thinking of carbon fiber, Kurai answered quickly. The weight of metal wouldn't be an issue for me, but if it got distorted because of a punch I threw or had to block, we'd come back to the problem of blood circulation or even a nerve pinch. Carbon fiber can take almost as many hits, it's lighter, and it won't get bent out of shape. It is more likely to break, though, Akadori pointed out as he grabbed the eraser and scrubbed at a misplaced line. I agree that it's the better of the two options until I can figure out a more permanent solution, but what's important is that you know what this means for you should your armor get broken. There was a brief moment of silence before Kurai finally made the reply. Being a hero is always going to be risky for me. Like you said, we can reduce the risk of my quirk going into overdrive, but not neutralize the problem with our current resources and your knowledge. If I wanted a career without risk to my health, this is the wrong profession, and I'm well aware of that. Akadori nodded without looking up while saying, all right, carbon fiber it is. For now. I'll be looking into alternatives that might hold up better under the kinetic forces that you'll be dishing out and receiving. In the meantime, I'm thinking these pieces will serve the balance between restraint and liberty for your powers. Flipping the sketch around, he slid it over for Kurai to inspect, who immediately raised his eyebrow in response. Seems a little light on the pressure point applications, he muttered, though not in an argumentative manner. True, but it targets the more potent ones that won't restrict your movements overmuch, the younger boy pointed out. Remember, this is just a stopgap. Besides, you can think of it as weighted training. Learning to fight with restrictions will let you really cut loose in the long run once those limiters are removed. At that, Kurai's expression brightened considerably. Well, if you put it like that, I don't see why not, he said with a grin. Gesturing for Akadori to pass the pencil back, he then added, all right, I'm just going to draw up something a little more detailed for those gauntlets aesthetics. Just don't go slapping the symbol of the Old Republic on there. You're trying to avoid getting sued, remember? I wasn't gonna. No Zakulan emblems either. Copyright laws suck. Bet you won't be saying that after you start getting royalties for hero merchandise bearing your image. Shut up! Never. 7 months ago. I designed him armor so that this exact thing should not happen, and what does he do? Akadori fumed as he stormed down the hallways of the hospital after his mother, grinding his teeth as he did. He goes and takes it off! Less than an hour ago, his father had called his mom to inform her that the USJ Center at UA High had been attacked by a gang of villains. Most of the students were unharmed, but there were several pros who had been hospitalized, as well as a member from the Class 1A. The moment that Mocha understood that Kurai had been rushed to the closest medical facility, she knew exactly what would have landed him there. She immediately gone to pick up Akudori from school and take him to the hospital where they were currently operating on her firstborn. Ever since Mocha had explained the situation to him, Akudori had felt a stirring mixture of shock and anger, both at the audacity of the villains and at Kurai for pulling such a boneheaded move. Flashbacks of the last time Kurai had lost his temper kept pulsing into view, blurring his sight as he tried not to think about the image of his brother convulsing and bleeding uncontrollably out of his face. To no effect. The younger Hikari was about to add a string of profanities under his breath as he and his mother entered the lobby when he felt his left leg go slack. Before he could call to his mother for help, he found himself falling forward, unable to use his left arm to brace himself against the oncoming impact. He shut his eyes as he waited for the pain to erupt from his face, only to feel a strong arm catch him up and prevent him from fully collapsing. He let out a short grunt as another hand steadied him from behind while a girlish voice asked, "Hey, are you okay?" Akudori knew that he was difficult for other people to deal with on a good day, so for the most part he tried to avoid interacting with anyone he didn't already know, or at least have a mutual friend with. Seeing as today was already a bad day, and the sudden, though temporary, loss of his motor functions were just adding to the negative contributors, he was currently doing everything he could not to come up with a reply that would offend his apparent rescuer. These competing factors eventually ended up being formed into the response, "I just thought that spot on the floor looked good for a nap." With that, he was being hauled to his feet as he managed to start getting a look at the person helping him, and his first thought was, what combination of quirks makes somebody that pink? "Akudori Hikari," Mocha said with a reprimanding tone as she moved to help the magenta-colored girl who was now supporting his weight. "I'm terribly sorry about his behavior, miss. Is there any chance I could ask you to help me get him to a seat?" Her anger was a mask, Akudori knew. Bad enough that Kurai's in here again, and now my quirk has to act up, he thought with a silent frustration as he tried to flex his fingers and swing his leg, only to meet with failure on both ends. At the very least, he still had control over his head and right limbs, which he used to try and hobble along as best he could. Wait. The girl's dark caramel eyes flicked back and forth between the boy and his mother, recognition lighting up in her gaze. "Hikari? As in Kurai Hikari?" Both mother and son's curiosity were ignited as they registered the familiarity with which she used that name, and upon taking in the sight of the girl's attire, something that definitely wouldn't be worn by anybody trying not to make it some kind of fashion statement, they realized she must be one of the other Hero Corps students from Kurai's class. Comprehending this a little quicker than his mom, Akudori then said, "You know my brother." "Yeah, I'm in his class." The girl nodded as they reached a group of seats that were partially occupied by a handful of people whom they presumed to be other hero students. "Here, you can sit with us." "Thank you." Mocha nodded while her son tried to work his hand again, this time feeling some stiff resistance in his pinky finger. "Can I leave him with you while I go speak with the doctors? I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but it's no trouble at all," the pink girl said through a wobbly smile and a slight film of tears. "After what Kurai's done for all of us today, anything I can do for his family is no problem." As she said this, the two women managed to get Akudori seated in one of the chairs that was a couple of spaces away from the other students, who were all talking quietly among themselves, having barely noticed their appearance. Akudori's eyes narrowed slightly at her casual use of his brother's given name, but he waited for his mother to say, "Thank you so much. Akudori, will you be all right while I—" Yeah, he said as he made a small shooing motion with his working arm. "I'm just dead weight right now, but I still want to know how he is. Please call me when you get to the prognosis." "Of course. Don't leave the lobby," she told him firmly, to which he waved his hand half-heartedly. "I mean it, son." "Yes, ma'am," he grumbled before swatting his left leg in annoyance. "Not like I can go anywhere right now." "If it gets worse." "Mom, I know the drill," Akudori said, his voice tightening with the beginnings of a new irritation. "Kurai gets priority right now, so please go make sure I'm still going to have a brother by the end of today." "Don't talk like that," Mocha muttered before she gave one last questioning look toward the pink girl, who gave an assuring nod in reply. Clearly still torn between concern for the both of her sons, she then gave her youngest a kiss on the head before departing at a rapid pace. "I didn't catch your name," Akudori said as soon as she was gone, his eyes darting over to the girl who had helped catch him up. "Oh, I'm Ashido," she replied as she sat down next to him, curiosity in her eyes as she looked him up and down. "Mina Ashido. Your brother told me about you, so I already know your name." The young boy's eyes narrowed for a brief moment before he said, "That would make you the girl he went to meet yesterday, wouldn't it?" Mina's face flushed lilac before she held up a finger to her lips while looking over at her classmates to see if any of them had overheard. When it appeared that they hadn't, she said in a lowered voice, "We're trying to keep that under wraps, okay? Please don't say anything to Tenya." Akudori cut her off with a dry tone, watching with some amusement as her black eyes widened even further. With a soft snort of derision, he then said, "Don't worry, I'm no snitch." Before he could say anything else, one of the students from nearby seemed to finally notice the newcomer because he turned to Mina and asked, "Who's the little guy, Ashido?" "Little?" Akurui sputtered angrily at the bare-chested redhead with spiky hair. "He's Kurai's kid brother," she replied as the other students began to take notice. "I guess he's going to be hanging out with me for a bit, though." Even as she said it, Akurui could see the confusion that flitted across her face as she seemingly started to wonder what had caused his collapse in the first place. Deciding to preempt any questions that he didn't want to answer, he said in a short tone, "I guess the news about my brother just caught up to me. I kind of almost fainted. Ashido here helped to keep me from having a face-to-face with the floor, so now she's stuck babysitting duty." At the last words, he gave the redhead a sour look, who appeared confused by what he had done to draw such ire.
"Sorry to hear that, Rivet,"
said a girl with a curiously blank look on her face as she crouched in a very frog-like manner by his chair.
"Can I get you some water or something?"
"No, thank you," Akurui said with a small shake of his head, breathing a quiet sigh of relief as he felt his left hand start to clench and release, allowing for a strong tingling in his fingers that let him know the sensation was returning to the extremities. While doing this, he looked around the two girls and their red-headed classmate, as well as another pair of boys, one with golden blonde hair and the other with giant elbows. Hoping to keep them from scrutinizing his excuse too closely, he then said, "You guys were at the USJ. What happened to my dumbass brother?" What the hell, kid?" The redhead sputtered angrily. "Your brother's in the hospital. That's the kind of thing you say about him?" "I designed his costume specifically to avoid this kind of thing from happening, which means that for his power to have gone out of control like it did, he would have had to remove the armor himself," Akurui deadpanned in reply. "He knew doing that would be all but certain death. Doing that just because some rent-a-thug villains broke on a campus sounds like a dumbass move if I ever heard one." "He didn't go all out to show off," the redhead shot back, his fists hardening to a rock-like consistency on reflex. "He didn't do it until one villain started attacking our teacher."
"A villain that was strong enough to put All Might on the defensive,"
the frog girl added with a small shudder. "Your brother did what he did to save all of us, not show off." Mina chimed in bitterly, her dark eyes glimmering with an unmistakable anger and... Is she crying? Akurui thought with a momentary surprise. He tried to set the feeling aside, blame her reaction on the horrible danger she and the rest of her class had just been subjected to. However, that notion couldn't hold very long with his intellect, as he realized that any initial tears drawn out by fear would have more than likely dried out some time ago, seeing as no one had died in the battle. She's worried about him. More than anyone else here, except maybe Tenya. Forcing the half of his body that he was in control of to relax, Akurui let out a long breath before saying, "Sorry. I know he isn't like that. I shouldn't have said what I did." There was a brief, awkward silence before the blonde kid said, "Well, you gotta be worried about him, right? He's your brother." "No shit, Sherlock." While Akurui was cementing in his mind the fact that the blonde boy was nothing less than a lummox, the frog girl told him,
"I've got a younger brother and sister, and if something like this happened to one of them, I'm sure I'd be freaking out a lot more than you are right now."
She blinked her large eyes at him before adding,
"I'm Sue Yasui, by the way, but you can call me Sue."
The other students then began to introduce themselves, which Akurui only half paid attention to. Of course, that was more than enough for him to perfectly memorize their names for later use, but the majority of his focus remained on the pink girl, who kept looking furtively down the hallway that led to the operating areas, her hands continuously clenching and unclenching. If he didn't know better, which would be absolutely ridiculous, he would have thought that she was more worried about Kurai than he was. Interesting, he mused while he listened to Kirishima begin to recount the story of All Might taking on some kind of monster with multiple powers, something that he would certainly have to look into later on, but he had more pressing concerns for the moment. Every girl that Kurai's ever crushed on either didn't know that he existed or just plain didn't care about him, but this girl, one date and she's already cares about him this much? Either he's got moves for girls I had no idea about, or she's someone special. He briefly considered the two options before deciding, Mina Ashido might just be someone worth keeping an eye on. 6 months ago. If I ever get access to Tartaros's data files, I'm going to schedule Moonfish's trip to the chair myself. Akurui seethed as he hunched over in his hospital bed, vicious rage stirring inside of him such as he had never felt before. Failing that, I'll blackmail a guard into sprinkling some cyanide and seasoning on his lunch. How I do that, I don't know yet, but damn it, I'll find a way. He had just received the summary of last night's events from his father, about how Kurai and several of his classmates had ended up in the same hospital as him following another surprise attack from the League of Villains. He had data-backed evidence showing that his heart had skipped a couple of beats when he had been told his brother had been brought to the very brink of clinical death before being operated on due to his right arm having been amputated in the course of a battle with a murderous cannibalistic villain. The fact that Kurai had managed to bring down the villain in the process was of absolutely no comfort to the boy, as he was made to realize that even with the device he had created for his brother, the seemingly impossible cure that he had sacrificed a grand majority of his motor functions in order to make, it had not been enough. Even with Akururi's grand ambition having been fulfilled, Kurai was on death's door once again. Now that his younger son was aware of the situation, Shigeru had been made to leave, having needed to begin coordination efforts with a great number of precincts and heroes in order to hunt down the League and their allies. He would be busy for a while, and his mother could only be by the side of either Akururi or Kurai at any given time, once again trapped between conflicting obligations. For the first time in his life, the younger Hikari found himself genuinely hating his own power, for enabling him to put it in Kurai's head that he could now fight without worry, and all but destroying his own body in the process. His hubris had put his entire family in this ill-fated position, and he loathed that fact with every fiber in his existence. The monitors attached to his body started to sound an alarm, which would no doubt alert the attending nurses that his heart was in distress, but he just found the noise was driving him to ignore his body's new limitations. Throwing the blankets off his legs, he heaved himself toward the wheelchair he had only just been given a few days prior. He didn't have much practice getting in and out of it without assistance yet, but damn if he wasn't going to pull it off now, fueled by sheer rage and spite. At least that's how it would have gone if the orderlies hadn't come in and yelled at him to stop moving without assistance, lest he hurt himself without even knowing it. If he'd been in control of his vocal cords at that moment, he would have hurled the most scorching profanities known to mankind in protest as they forced him back onto the bed and informed him in the sternest wording that he was not to try that again until he was cleared by his physical therapist. As it was, he wrote down some of these choice phrasings in the second that he had his pencil and notebook back within reach, after which he wadded them into a ball and hurled them at the next nurse who walked in the door. Under normal circumstances, he would have enacted such a notion as a juvenile means of hassling someone, but under his current condition, it was roughly the equivalent of him trashing the room as to be unusable. The nurse merely ignored the bunched-up paper in favor of moving to reapply some of the monitoring nodes that had been disconnected by his attempts to get out of the bed. The second she came within range to grasp at the wires, Akururi made a show of petulance by refusing to cooperate with her requests that he lean forward so she could do her job. "Kid, I've put these nodes on people who are a lot bigger than you, and they all had full muscle control," she deadpanned in a tired voice. "We can do this the easy way, and your doctor will be along to check you and clear you for a visit to your brother in a few hours, or we can do this the way where I stick a needle in your butt and make you take a nap until this evening. What's it gonna be?" Akururi shot her a withering glare that she remained absolutely unwithered by, until he used his arms to pull himself forward so that his back was a couple of inches off the inclined mattress. He did nothing further to either assist or hinder her work until she was done, after which he sank back into the mattress, his vision still throbbing with a red tinge, as he silently contemplated ways to ensure that Moonfish never saw the light of another day. So wrapped up in his thoughts of vengeance was he that he nearly missed the nurse trying to get his attention. In fact, it wasn't until she shook his shoulder, careful not to jostle his neck in the process, and said, "Hey, Einstein Jr.," that he even bothered to pay her any heed. Once she could see that she had his attention, she sighed and told him, "Look, you're pissed, and I get that. Your brother got messed up real bad by a villain. That'd be not enough to rile up any decent person. But you're not the only one in this hospital who's hurting right now, and undoing the little amount of physical therapy that you've been able to maintain since you got here isn't going to help you or your brother." He glared at her for another moment before furiously scribbling in his notepad, "I am in a position to do literally nothing else but be angry. I can't even go to a damn bathroom without asking permission, much less sit next to my brother while he is fighting for his life." The woman read the note, and without a tone of apology in her voice, replied, "Suck it up, Buttercup. You've got a working brain and 2 good arms right now, which is 1 more than what your brother will have if he can recover from this. If you need to do something, how's about you stop complaining about what you're limited to doing? Start getting creative with what you've still got. I know your quirk stays on whether you want it to or not, so you might as well do something productive with it." When all Akururi would do was continue to level a glare at her, she shrugged and then said, "Have it your way, Hikari. But if I had your quirk and my brother was in the shape yours is in, I'd be doing everything in my power to make sure that his recovery could go as smoothly as possible. He's going to need all the help he can get, even from you." As she left the room, Akururi transferred his dark gaze down to his limp legs and clenched his fists while he thought, "My help might just be what landed him in here. That's the problem." A ray of concentrated sunlight chose that moment to bounce off the building across the way and steal into his room, striking him across the face like a slap that forced him to shut his eyes against the glare. As darkness dulled the impact on his optical nerves, countless designs and schematics that he had seen while in the central computer system of Island in search of a cure for his brother's illness began to once again dance within the confines of his consciousness. Even as he turned his neck so that he would be able to open his eyes without harming them, they remained firmly shut, almost as if against his own will. What does all this information help me with now? He thought angrily, though his eyes still refused to open. All my intellect and the knowledge I was able to obtain, and Kurai might just be worse off than before. I magicked him up a collar that rewrote his neural network on a near psychic level, but now that he's on death's door for an entirely different reason, I can't even figure out how to... Akaduri's thought process came to a complete stop as he turned back toward the light and forced his eyes open, allowing the light to fully strike his body through the window pane. There's nothing I can do for him right now, he forced himself to acknowledge. Right now, his life is in his and the doctor's hands. But what comes after? What comes when he continues his journey as a hero? That... I might be able to do something about that. No. The boy's hands moved faster than they had since his paralysis as he snatched up his pencil and notepad, a replica of one of David Shield's physical augmentation projects quickly taking shape under his careful movements as he thought, I will do something about it. There was no doubt in his mind whatsoever that Kurai would pick himself up and take up the mantle of the guardian hero in due time. His brother didn't do things in half measures, and his resolve would someday put many men's proclamations to shame. If I want to put a claim on having even a single strand of bloodlines that connect us, I need to put in the same kind of commitment to my work. With that in mind, he turned the page and began a new sketch, this one based on a proposed power conduit structure from Eric Rush, the very same man who had designed the drones responsible for Island's security. I won't settle for getting you back to how you were, Kurai, he vowed as he began to lay out his own notes for alterations and improvements to the initial designs. I'm going to see to it that the League of Villains wishes they'd left you with your original arm. Even if my time is running out already, your work is far from finished. So let's make sure you get to your goal in one piece from here on out. Present day. Hey, smartass. Akaduri closed his eyes as the words from his brother's final message began to play in his ears again, allowing him to almost see the older boy as he had been speaking them. He had heard the message twice and fully memorized it already, but even now he hoped there was a chance that he might hear something new in the recording, something that would allow him, even if only for a few seconds, to imagine that he and Kurai could have one last talk. I can imagine you already know what this message is going to be about, given all the files that I've attached to it, the dead boy said heavily. Before I get to what really needs to be said, let me preface it by saying that I'm going to do my damnedest to call and tell you that this message and all of its contents can be erased before you even get the chance to open them. But we've both become too well-versed in worst-case scenarios for me not to be prepared for what may come by day's end. There was a pause, followed by a harsh series of coughs that tore Akaduri's chest, as though the sounds were erupting from his own lungs, before Kurai went on to say, I'm sure you could tell by my voice, I've already taken a bad hit. Some whack job showed up yesterday on the island, and to make a long story short, I slipped up. And now I've got a hole in my lung and a patchwork seal on my skin just to keep my blood where it's supposed to be. Honestly, it wouldn't be such an issue if we weren't gearing up for a rematch with these villains in about 3 or so hours. This brings me to why I'm leaving you this message. If you've heard this, I'm dead, and I don't want to leave you the same way that Dad left us, without any explanations. So here it is. I'm going to take part in the battle that's coming. Even as injured as I am, my quirk makes me too powerful an asset to just leave on the sidelines. I have to do everything I can to make sure that the Islanders and my friends survive. Of course, my survival will be preferable, and I'll certainly be aiming for that. But nothing in combat is a sure thing. If you're hearing this, there are a couple of things that I need you to do for me. Kurai said, his voice becoming even more somber than how it had begun. At some point in the near future, make sure the files that I've sent get to All Might and Principal Nezu, as well as Detective Tsukuichi. They'll sort through the relevant data that'll help close any loose ends on this case. Next, I need you to tell Mom, Shukin, and Aunt Sakura that I'm sorry. I wish things could have turned out differently, but again, if you're hearing this, all the wishing in the world won't change what's happened. Give them my love and let them know that I'll be waiting for them on the other side when the time comes. I know this next one is going to be difficult, but I would appreciate it if you didn't hold this whole thing as the teachers and my friends. There was no way we could have known that something like this was going to happen. Our school did everything they could to avoid a scenario just like this one. There was a short wheezing chuckle before he added, if you want to throw the book at somebody, aim for the Heroes Public Safety Commission. I'm sure me and his brother, Mako, would be willing to help on that end. Mako Ashido, Akurui recalled, had recently become a prosecuting attorney. Speaking of Mina, please look after her. Kurai said, sounding a little more choked up than when he had first begun. She's not going to take this well, to say the least. I'm sure you already knew that, but even so, it needs to be said. I've left a message for her too, so make sure she gets a chance to listen to it. Last of all, do me this giant favor and don't become like me. Akurui squeezed his eyes harder, trying desperately to see his brother's oh-so-snarky smile as he listened to him say, I made some pretty big promises, and if this message plays out, it means that I wasn't able to keep them. I know you've got a deck stacked way against you already, but I want you to live to be better than me. Keep your promise, since I couldn't. Use that smart-ass brain of yours and beat that tumor trying to keep you down. I have no doubt whatsoever that you can. Do that, and I know your work will go on to save more lives than Kai ever could. There was one last pause before Kurai spoke his final words to his brother. All right, your dumbass brother has to get going. Love you, Aki. Just like that, he was gone again. There'd been nothing new in the message for Akurui to find, no solace that could be offered in place of his departed brother, and no way that he could, for all his vast intellect and knowledge, find a way to bring himself, or anyone he knew, any measure of comfort in this dark, evil hour. What I wouldn't give to turn back time.
I hate to see you go. Without you, I just don't know. When the day comes when I fall, you won't be there to catch me, no. I try, but I can't seem to. Nobody could replace you. At a loss for words as the memories flood my mind. Took the only chance to bring me back again. Like family, so much more than a friend. Miss you 3,000. Miss you 3,000.
I said Phase 5 was going to be about depressing stuff. This is not going to be a one and done sad chapter. This is going to keep going.
Not that long though, right?
Is it not that long?
It's not that long.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't have to wait 2 weeks every time. There's
That's
a
true.
chapter,
That's
so
true. Yeah.
I'm
yeah.
one to talk. Never
I mean,
mind.
yeah.
That's a great way to open. Wow.
I don't know. Like.
At least he's honest.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to.
All right. So.
Yeah. I mean, like Phase 5 is gonna be about like how do they move on from this kind of thing.
Cool.
So that's gonna involve a lot of heavy material.
All right, so a lot of people were hoping to hear the message for Akurui.
Yeah, honestly, I almost didn't do this chapter because largely for the reason that I wanted to keep Kurai's last words to Akurui a private thing between the two of them. But Becca made a good point that I should explore like how this is going to immediately like as opposed to focusing on like just the large picture, like the far-reaching effects. I should take some time to focus on like how this is going to affect his immediate family, like people who have grown up with him and like seen him grow up.
Yeah.
And I realized she was right, so I decided to go ahead and do this. This chapter focuses a lot on Akurui and Shuken. Shuken's his cousin, but especially after this narrative, you can tell like they really grew up like they were brothers.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, they've been there for each other, like, through every, you know, crazy event that's happened to them. Yeah, so I wanted to open up with the scene between Shuken and Akurui, like, really helps to set up what the rest of the chapter is going to be about.
And we get some little Akurui moments.
Yeah,
which
we
is
do.
kind of
We
great.
do.
I mean, they're heavy, but it's also kind of great.
Akurui is a little savage, man. Like,
He
he's like 4 years old. He's hitting his cousin in the balls with a backpack because he's being dumb.
Let's be real. We all know a 4-year-old who will do that. But
I don't know any 4-year-olds who would be able to put their reasoning forth so concisely.
Yeah. Clearly that's his quirk.
I liked kind of...
It's a feather.
Okay, I thought that was a spider.
No, it's a feather.
No, so I wanted to, like, there's that bit where, like, his aunt is kind of looking at him like he's a 3-year-old spitting out these full sentences where it's like, this is kind of creepy. It's like this is not like, it's like the 3-year-olds that I know are like, they're able to speak full sentences and they're starting to like get that reasoning skill happening, like, you know, A causes B and so forth. I don't know any 3-year-olds who can like
articulate
themselves that
way.
well.
Yeah.
That was
that's his quirk, clearly.
Yeah.
That's not just like,
it's not just his personality, but
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say his quirk kicked in a little early compared to some people.
Like I mentioned, it was kind of interesting. I kept having to catch myself while I was writing this to put it in a way that everybody's like, oh yeah, Kurai's quirk just manifested late. They like, because nobody's operating under the knowledge of like, oh, he didn't. At this point, as far as everybody's concerned, Kurai was born with his quirk like everybody else. It just needed time to build up or whatever.
Yeah, because that's normal.
And Akurui is just an early bloomer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and then there's like people like the glowing baby, right? There's people who are just born with those traits. Whether they can like utilize them yet is a different story, but you know.
Yeah. So, yeah, writing this was an interest. Like, doing flashbacks is always interesting because I have to be very careful. It's like, okay, what do I know and what do the characters know? And I have to keep that I have to be very careful with that.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Nice. So let's jump into some of those flashbacks.
Yeah. So first flashback is, you know, right after Shuken's dad has died. You know, Akurui and Kurai are trying to help their cousin feel better, but you know, like, dramatic irony, they have no idea what it would feel like to lose their dad.
They're like, Kurai's trying to be sensitive. Akurui is kind of already.
He's like, I know what the problem is. We just need to figure out how to solve it. And Kurai's like, this is not a problem we can solve. Shut up.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, their very brotherly bickering ends up kind of bringing Shuken out of his shell. Even though he's very angry, it gets him to come out of his room.
My favorite bit from that scene was kind of like writing Kurai, like how he's still discovering his abilities here. And so like he's kind of like trying to pull Akurui away from the door and he just like rips his shirt. Because he doesn't understand how strong because he doesn't understand how strong he is, and they're just both kind of looking at the shirt like, oh man. And Akurui's like, you're picking on me. He's like, I didn't do anything wrong. He's just like, shut up, come with me. So he starts dragging him by the arm this time. So he doesn't. But yeah, he's like still figuring out what his abilities do. So that was really fun. it was really fun, like getting to see this like learning stages version of Kurai, because since Kurai's first been introduced, he's been showcased as a very capable person who's in control of himself most of the time.
But we never got to see him.
Like we never saw his learning curve. We've seen his learning curve, but like after he's grasped the basic principles of his quirk, he barely understands how his quirk works at this point.
Yeah, it's very new to him.
Yeah, that like it's a little thing, but it was really fun for me to write about. Let's see. Next we get so this was back during the Class A versus Class B arc. I did the flashback to when Kurai like actually first lost his temper.
Oh yeah.
And now we get to see like the aftermath of that, like what that did to his family.
Because we've referenced him the first time, but we haven't ever been able to see it
No. We saw it.
Oh.
We saw remember that there was the two bullies that were picking on Shukin.
Yeah.
And they were saying bad stuff about his family, and Kurai just like snapped. He went off on them. But we didn't see like the aftermath of that. Is what I hadn't showed yet. And I'm glad that you convinced me to write this chapter, because I did enjoy like getting to show what his family went through each time, you know, he went through one of these episodes. And it really gave me a good, like, I knew that all this stuff had happened, but I'm glad that I got the opportunity to show, like, you know, this is what got Kurai started on becoming Kai as we know him. Like, these are the events that turned him, these are the events that fueled his desire to become the hero that he becomes.
Yeah. So
that was, I enjoyed that quite a bit. I enjoyed having this opportunity. So if you guys enjoyed this chapter, thank my wife for it, because if it was just up to me,
the story would have moved forward a lot more quickly. So sorry if some of you don't like that.
Yeah.
Now I think he took.
So if you guys don't like it, it's her fault. If you do like it, it's her fault.
Also, that being said, he also took my comment to an extreme, because I thought he was gonna add like maybe one chapter, and he got really into this. So. I apologize, but I also enjoy it.
I promise it's not.
So, it's not too crazy.
It's not too crazy. It's not too long of a dry spell. Stuff will start.
Yeah.
Like there's gonna be a couple of chapters that go into like, you know, this one goes into like how it affects his family. Another's gonna go into like how it affects like the people that he has touched with his actions.
Inner circle. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, which kind of will show like what happened in the more far-reaching effects.
Yeah. And then, you know, but you're at the same time, you're still good at putting in little
bits to keep the story moving.
Little nuggets that keep the story moving.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of a transitional My Hero recap episode.
Yeah.
Where you get new, fresh stuff, which it's not like other anime recaps where it's literally just stuff you've seen already.
It's stuff you've seen already cut together into a 20-minute segment.
Instead, it's a very My Hero beginning of the season. Like, you get new information and new character development, and the story's kind of moving forward, even if it's a little bit of a snail pace for a short period. So I promise the story will keep moving forward. We're just gonna get some nice little.
It just feels like
character development.
It just feels like so much happened that it's one of those times where it's like, okay, we need to slow down.
Yeah.
So, but
it won't be slow for too long, so don't worry.
Yeah.
Don't you worry, friends. You know him.
Oh man, what was I gonna say? I love that scene where Kurai is just like had it up to here with Shukin and his pity party, because like he's like, Shukin has good reasons for being worried, but he's also kind of being a brat, and it's the 4-year-old who's like his like Akurai and Kurai's dad kind of tells Shukin off, but it's Akurai who's just like, I've had enough of this, and just straight up sack whacks him with a backpack.
Which, let's be real, we all have the little cousin that would do that.
Yes.
So,
that was a really funny scene to write for me.
Yeah. Was there anything else from that scene you wanted to go over?
Not a whole lot. Like we touch on like Kurai, you know, being able to put into words why he's going to become a hero and what he's hoping to accomplish from that. And then after
next is the USJ, right?
No, that was the USJ comes later. The next flashback for Shukin, the last flashback for Shukin is when he's watching Kurai at the sports festival.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, because like, so I kind of wrote myself into a corner with this one because I was like, wait a minute, why wasn't Shukin and his mom like in the box seats with
his family?
Yeah. I'm like, he definitely should have been there. So I had to come up with a believable reason to like, okay. I'm like, okay, they've got a car. Take out the car with a villain attack. Wait, everybody in Japan takes trains. I guess I could take the train out too with another villain attack. I'm like, is that a little convenient? Maybe, but with the amount of villain attacks that happen in the cities, like, I don't think it's too unbelievable. Like, I don't know. I try not to, like, I don't know what writer writes themselves into a corner on purpose, but like, I like to think that I've been pretty good about not writing myself into corners. this is the first time I can remember for a while.
Admittedly.
This is the first time for a while that I can remember, like, oh wait, how do I get out of this? Like, how do I bullshit my way through this?
But I mean, at the end of the day, you get this nice intimate moment where his mom is able to see, oh my gosh, like I'm so thankful that my son is moving to a point where
Like he can believe in something again.
Yes, he's not just jaded.
Jaded, yeah.
And he's it's not like he's a negative person. He's the guy who kind of jokes his way through everything to get through the day.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he's still a little bit jaded underneath. And I think we all know kind of that real hilarious person who jokes to kind of hide their pain.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of who Shuken has been up until now. So it's really nice for his mom to see, oh my gosh, my kid is like, he's not really a kid anymore. He's almost an adult.
Well, Shuken is he's 17.
He's 17. Okay, so he's still a teenager. So
he's like in his last year of high school.
Okay, so she's able to see her young adult son, start to
like not put the pain behind him, but like
move forward
with it.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and like I wanted to have his like Shuken needed to Shuken like you guys have seen this through Akarui and Kurai. It's like they're very cynical people. Mm-hmm. Like they don't have a whole lot of faith in humanity, and Shuken for good reason shares that sentiment. Mm-hmm. So for him to have like somebody to believe in again is a huge thing for him.
Yeah.
Then we have that interim where it's back in the present day. Shuken, I have thought about having like Ida just tell Shuken what he knew about Kurai's final moments, but then I was just like, nah, I can have way more fun with Bakugo being the one to tell him.
Yeah. And it's like, it's still really fresh for Ida too, so I don't think he doesn't think he can handle it, and he also feels like he owes Shuken like someone who was actually there with him the last moment. Yeah. So.
Which is Bakugo, and Bakugo is, I'd like to think that I there's been a few comments about how like it's interesting that I'm using Bakugo to drive so many like emotional points through.
Yeah, but the only reason he wasn't there in the middle of everything, in the mitotes, you'd say, like he's not up in everyone's business, is because there were just, we had our main focus on these characters, and Kurai is such a compelling character that it's like, and he's really powerful, so everyone kind of focuses on him, especially since Bakugo's just kind of Mr. Grouchy Pants third wheel, right?
Yeah.
And so now, all of a sudden, we have the original big three are the new big three.
Yeah.
So he can kind of come into the story a little bit more, and he's loud. So, I mean, he's never had a trouble making himself heard, but now I think it just makes sense for him to start playing a larger role in the story, especially since he played such a huge role in the final chapters of Kurai's life.
Yeah. I had fun with the, like, I know it was a really serious conversation, but I loved Bakugo being like, yeah, I don't care about what he did when he was a kid. I'm just here to tell you what happened yesterday, like what he did with his
Which
last
is very typical of him.
Yeah. It's like, I liked writing in that he has to, like, he physically has to refrain from calling Shuken an extra. Mm-hmm. Because that's just how he refers to everybody. But he's like, and that shit, like, again, I'm trying to show, like, he held Kurai in such a high regard that, like, Shuken is somebody who he has, like, had no interactions with. Mm-hmm. But because he knows that he was related to and was important to Kurai, he's trying to treat him with whatever amount of respect he can muster.
Still comes across incredibly rude because it's Bakugo.
But because
for Bakugo, it's very heartfelt.
That's as heartfelt as you're gonna get.
Exactly.
Yeah. He just hangs up on him. He's like, all right, I did my bit. Bye.
Yeah. Don't you be blubbering to me about your
feelings. I love it. I really like getting to have that moment where he tells Shuken, he's like, this is who you're related to. This is how great he was. Don't ever embarrass him.
Yeah.
So like he's kind of like not paying it forward. I don't know what phrase I'm looking for. Yeah. But like he's trying to.
He's conveying his respect.
He's conveying his respect. He's trying to.
Which is very hard for him.
Yeah.
it physically pains him to be respectful and honoring of anyone.
Like,
So,
yeah. I mean, he did
because
say
he's a
thank you.
narcissist.
Yeah, the only person we've heard him say thank you to was All Might, I think. No, wait, that's not true. He said thank you to Kirishima at one point as well.
Okay.
But yeah, it takes a lot to get to have Bakugo give you a thank you. I was trying to figure out, is like, how would Akururi like kind of listen in on this conversation? I'm like, oh wait, Akururi can like make any kind of tech he wants. Of course, he's got he can tap somebody's phone call, no problem.
If he feels like it, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love putting in that little bit how he's just like, as a rule, I don't eavesdrop on my family members' conversations, but
Yeah. That one's a little too juicy to stay out of.
yeah. Well, I mean, again, he's like, if
He
I'm
has a right to know.
he's like, if this is the closest thing I'm going to get to a first-hand account, I have a right to know. So,
But he's also not the kind who's going to go asking for that kind of thing.
yeah,
So
he doesn't
getting it secondhand is as close as he's going to get.
yeah. So, yeah, it was all like, yeah, like writing, like, how do I put this? Again, it's difficult for me to write different reactions to the same revelations and event, because like, Shuken and Akururi, for all their similarities, are also different people.
Yeah.
So for Shuken, hearing the way that Kurai died, the last moments that he lived his life, was a thing of relief for him, to know that like Kurai kept his word. He did what he said he was going to do, and he's relieved. But then you have Akururi, who's just like, he's like, I enabled him to do all that, and
he's still blaming himself.
He's like, I drove him to his death.
Yeah.
He's like, I drove him to his final moments, basically. Which was, it's like, that's the opposite of what he wanted. And we kind of see, like, the theme of his flashbacks is he's trying to help his brother through, like, in each flashback, he's doing something to try and help his brother.
Yeah, but at the same time, he feels helpless because he's...
Well, yeah, A, he feels
person.
helpless. And B, he, like, after each event passes, he's like, did I just make things worse again by enabling Kurai?
And unfortunately, he's kind of he's got a little bit of an inflated ego because of his quirk. And so, of course, it's only natural that he's kind of making it about himself, and he's forgetting that his brother's his own person and his brother is making these decisions. It's not all about him. But
again, we have to witness it through his narrative lens, not an abject one.
But that's the thing. Everybody mourns differently, and that's all he can see right now.
Yeah. I remember your favorite flashback of his was where he's designing the costume with him, right?
Yes, that one.
That one was really, like, that was like the only scene in this story where it's just like there's no serious, like, not serious, like, there's not a lack of seriousness, but
it's relaxed.
It's the only fully relaxed, like, there's nothing, like, they're not immediately concerned with anything. They're just like, hey, costume design time, this is gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
It's like that. It's like, okay, yeah,
giving
like,
each other crap about their ideas.
About the ideas, and like, but they also cover some serious stuff. But they get to do it in a way where it's just like, okay, this is it's like we're not struggling to like cover for a mistake that we made or like keep up with the repercussions of what our prior decisions was. They're like this is them like planning for the future that they're really excited about.
Yeah.
And like, while I know that kind of lends a heavier tone to the rest of it overall, I had fun with writing it because it was really nice to be able to like write this interaction with the two of them where it's just like they're just brothers being brothers. They're giving each other crap.
Nice.
But they're also bonding.
So where do we go from here?
From there, we went on to, let's see, what happened again? So this was the US. After that was the USJ.
Then we have the USJ.
And I wanted to cover, once I decided to do this chapter, I wanted to cover how Akururi met Mina for the first time.
And it also, for me, my favorite part is that we get to see, we have a little bit of dramatic irony happening here because we know at this point that Akururi's quirk was starting to mess with him. The tumor was, was already kind of affecting him. It hadn't been exacerbated yet. But
it's not the first time it's kind of
No,
implied
I
that this
know,
isn't
yeah.
the first time that's
Yeah.
happened to him,
It's
but
been
it's
an
not.
ongoing health situation
Yeah.
for him. So normally he's used to being the one at this point who's got health issues because of his quirk. And so it makes him even more salty that his brother has more control over it than he does. And he's still blowing it, right?
Yeah.
But it's kind of, it's interesting because the only way that he would have sat down and had a conversation with these people at this point is if he was in a helpless situation. And it's nice.
But he's also still able to like kind of like play it off. Like he's
Yeah.
good at hiding it still.
Yeah, he's able to kind of, blame it on the
circumstance.
stress, the anxiety, right? Even though he's just a little twerp about it.
Well, we know that, but
Yeah.
these people that he's meeting for the first
Yeah.
time, they don't know that.
Yeah, but he's able to play it off and be like, oh, yeah, it's just the stress of my brother being in the hospital. And they're like, oh, yeah, whatever. This little kid's just having issues, right?
Yep.
But we can tell reading
I just
it-
love how immediately with Kaminari, he's just like, this guy's stupid. Kaminari's there trying to be nice to him, and all Akurari can think is, this guy's dumb.
Just imagine if the abridged was canon and Kaminari was just like in his head and be like, hi.
Oh, yeah. I think Akurari would like cause his brain to overload is what would happen.
Probably. Hi there. I thought the same thing too. I
Akurari just like
can't.
spams his brain with quantum physics.
Oh my gosh, just fries him right on the spot. But no, and I love that he's very impressed with Mina. He's like, what the heck? She actually likes my brother. Okay.
He's
Okay.
like, my brother a ladies man and I just missed. Nah, it's something about this
He's
girl.
not.
He just like
She's just
immediately
special.
discounts. He's like, no, there's no way.
He's too
Kurai
awkward.
doesn't have that kind of game. This
Girl's special.
This girl's special. Yeah.
She cares about him for some reason. Okay.
I thought that was a very brother thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where he's
But-
just like, yeah.
like,
Oh man, that was fun.
But I like that he's able to kind of root for it and not be cynical about it, which is kind of special because he's not always cynical. He can still like have like positive hopes and dreams. So it's kind of nice that we have that little first interaction where
Yeah.
Akurui gets to annoy everyone for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just,
I'm sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That was You guys know any scene with Akurui in it is not any scene, but like
Hopefully.
9 out of 10 times, if Akurui is gonna be in a scene, there's gonna be laughs involved
Yes.
because he's just a savage little person.
Yes. We love him.
Yes, and then we jumped into the flashback where it's like he's just been crippled. Like this is right after Eye Island, and on top of him being crippled, turned halfway into a vegetable, his brother goes and almost gets himself killed.
This one had me.
Yeah.
You
liked the nurse.
I like the nurse. She is like, but that's the thing. There's some hardened nurses who will straight up tell you like it is.
Yep.
And it's not that they have a bad bedside manner. They just are going to be honest with you. And I always appreciate those nurses. Because like I'm sure at this point, all of the young new nurses are like, no, I'm not going in to deal with that kid. I can't handle him.
Yeah.
Right. He's just so awful.
He
right?
hasn't been mean. I don't think he's been mean to anybody like up to now.
No, but he's being very difficult. So they're going to send in the intense, strong personality nurse who can handle him. And I love what she has to say because it's so... And
I just love the image of like her walking in with this dead expression on her face, like a piece of paper hits her because Akuru's throwing stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, that's the thing. Sometimes that's how it works. Like someone you don't know from Adam will say something and it just clicks. And I don't know. I loved what she had to say to him and just the...
Like made him think about what he was doing.
And like just the emotions that he's dealing with is killed me. That one had me on the verge of tears, if not tears. I can't remember.
I definitely cried while I was reading some of Shuken's lines in the first couple scenes. Like I had to stop because like my eyes were like I was trying to read. I had to pause because like I had to clear my eyes out because I was reading Shuken's lines and I was getting all emotional. I was like, oh no. But yeah, like then there was the last scene where we do get to... I know some of you were wondering, it's like, oh, we're gonna get to hear Kurai's message to Akurui, and originally this was the part where I was like, no, I just want that to be between the two of them, like nobody else needs to know. But I'm like, I can't have all this stuff
And then
in
just
there
leave it
and then just leave it like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Akururi needs to. I'm like, we need to. It's like they need to see what this is doing to Akururi.
Yeah.
Like not just his memories, but like him trying
Currently.
desperately to find something new in this message that he's like already memorized.
Because we also need to just see the fuel that's going to push him forward in these coming chapters too.
Yeah. I changed a few of the words last minute because originally I just had him saying, "Hey, Akururi," but I remember that part of their interaction is to call each other smartass and dumbass.
Yeah.
So he opens it up. He's like, "Hey, smartass," and he's like, "Hey," but like Akururi knows, like that's his way. That's his way of saying,
It's a
"Hey
term
man,
of
this is important."
It's a term of endearment.
It's a term of endearment between them, but
like
immediately given the context of their relationship, it's him saying like, "Hey, this is important."
My brother growing up called me a SHIT head, as a term of endearment. So
sounds about right for him.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I don't get hurt by it. That's a term of endearment.
Kurai has always called him a smart ass because of Akururi's quirk. Akururi's always called him a dumbass because he can't keep up with him academically.
Yeah, I see, and I just tell my brother he has self-imposed Tourette's. So that's what siblings do, and I think that just makes it more personal.
Yeah.
And painful.
Yeah. I honestly like going into this. Like I tried to think. I'm like, okay, if I was gonna die and like I needed to leave some last words to my brothers who were just gonna have very little to no explanation of what was going on. Like, what would I say to them? Like, what do I? I'm like, what? I'm like, what is so important that I can't leave it for somebody else to figure out or surmise, or just like things that I can't leave unanswered. And so that's what I tried to put into this.
Okay, nice. Oh, that makes me emotional. Stop.
I'm sorry. Wow.
All right. Well, I think that's about it.
Yeah, that is it.
And so, what do we have to look forward to?
So, like I mentioned earlier, the next chapter is going to be more about people who
he's touched,
his actions have. Yeah. So I don't know why I keep burping. Like I didn't have anything particularly bubbly recently, but we're gonna get to look at some people who his actions have touched.
And then also kind of how everything's moving forward.
Yes.
Socially, because the information's going to hit the news.
Yes.
Too. So the world at large, or at least the community, the hero community in Japan, is going to be reeling from this crazy situation. So we're going to see what's going to start happening politically, hopefully, too.
Yep. You guys can count on that.
All right.
I'm sure there's at least a few of you who are looking forward to that kind of thing.
Cool.
But thank you guys so much for listening to our responses to your reviews. Thank you for listening to the audio chapter. Thing you for indulging us in our behind the scenes shenanigans. We really appreciate you guys. Yeah. We really appreciate you guys sitting through 79 podcasts with us so far.
Ooh, are we going to do anything special for 80?
No, I don't think so.
Not a double
chapter? No, we're not doing it. The only time I do double chapters is when the anniversary rolls around.
Okay.
You know this.
Okay.
You know this.
You guys can't say I didn't try.
You're always trying, and it's not going to happen.
All right.
I don't know why you keep trying.
Anyway, I'm still fighting this battle for you guys. I tell you. Anyway,
she just has to have it on the record here for you guys.
I have to.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, I do hope that you have a plus ultra couple of weeks, and we'll see you for the next one.